We're live.
Okay,
Am I gonna spell?
it is Wednesday, November 29th, 2023. This is the Curriculum and Learning Committee meeting. We are at the school district of Menominee Falls. Here, I can do this whole thing again. There is a possibility that a quorum of the full membership of the Board of Education may be in attendance at board committee meetings, including virtual meetings. There will be no full board action taken at any board committee meeting. Only members of the committee may vote on any item on the agenda. A live broadcast will be streamed on the school district YouTube page. To watch the recorded meeting, please visit the SDMF YouTube site. This is the school district of Menominee Falls. We are in conference room 3344/3345 on Pilgrim Road. And we'll call the meeting to order at 6:01. Was it properly posted?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll move on to minutes approval. Did everybody get a chance to look at the minutes? Any changes or comments? Do I have a motion?
Nope. I'll motion. I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All right, moving on. First item, world language standards adoption.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everybody. So we have Kimberly Hassenauer here. She is a world languages teacher at the high school as well as the curriculum chair for both middle school and high school. And last month I shared the world language standards document with you and asked that you review it. We are looking to update our standards at this time, and then promise that Kimberly would be here as our content expert to answer any questions you have, but I'll turn it over to her briefly. I think she has a couple comments.
Yeah, I just, the changes that we had, basically Wisconsin didn't have updated standards to match the national standards until 2019. So we had been, there's something called the 5 C's, communities, communication, culture, connections, and comparisons that Wisconsin has had since I started teaching. So we had that, but we never had, more clear ICANNs, leading towards the proficiency standards that we have in world languages. So we had been using the actual standards, which is the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Language, and it has these 3 modes of communication: interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational. And then they also have an intercultural communication standard as well. So we had been using those. Those I think were updated in 2012. So we had been using those, and our standards or scope and sequence had reflected that all along. And then Wisconsin finally adopted those as well. And so we have what it looks like for Wisconsin. And basically they took the 5 C's and they took the actual proficiency standards and they kind of, put it all together. And the main difference that we found when going through this is that they just have different letters and numbers that they use to, to put it all down. Because it all matches. I printed off, this is the most updated 2017 actual standards. Actually, it looks a little bit nicer with the actual ones compared to the Wisconsin ones, but potato, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes through, there's a goal area of communication, and then it has the standard. For example, standard 1 is interpretive communication, and then it has the learner practices. So there's, like 1A, 1B, or 2B, and then it goes through the different, or 1A, 1B, 1C, and then it goes through the different ICANNs and what the students should do or be able to do at the different proficiency levels. So there's novice low to novice high. That's kind of your, level 1 kids. Intermediate low to intermediate high. And there's also a great visual in our standards of a cone shape, where as students are learning the language, you quickly move, you fill up your cone pretty quickly in the novice, but as you move along, intermediate takes longer to build. You have time frames that you're learning, and you have more vocabulary that you're adding to it. So it takes a little bit longer. So students in like levels 2, 3, even 4 are in that intermediate range, and then they start to move potentially into the advanced range. But that is something that it's hard to reach at this level in high school. But everything pretty much matched identically. The only thing that's slightly different is Wisconsin did add an additional standard that they call the cultural and global competence one. So that's a little bit in addition to the intercultural communication one, but that was the only difference that we found. So we did go through and update our scope and sequences to have the Wisconsin lingo with the, the W, L, I, T, 1, A, and 1 rolls off the tongue, so. So we did update that, and so, yeah. So that's what the Wisconsin ones are compared to, what we had before with the actual standards.
So it makes sense at this point if we're getting ready to, at some point, look at new curricular materials, just to have the most updated standards that also then would be reflected on our websites. So
Right.
people could see that we're not using just standards from 2012, but, we've got the 2019 version, which again, lots of similarities.
Yes, yep.
Just reflects kind of where we are here in Wisconsin at this time.
And the adjustment in the North Middle School schedule, because I think that was part of the conversation why we changed the schedule to allow the elective, and that would also allow students to be able to start earlier and progress and take the full
Yeah,
series.
to ensure that they have the full series.
Okay.
So that won't necessarily affect, these standards won't necessarily affect that, but.
But I would see probably more students being able to actually advance more since they're able to actually take those courses in the lower levels.
Yeah, and having 7th grade the entire year now every other day is
Yeah.
great because there's no gap. If they had it first semester and then they don't have it second semester and then they're off in the summer, it was
Yeah,
always
that's
a little, that was rough. So this is really nice having that every other day the whole year. I like that a lot, so, yeah.
Yeah, I like it. It's good.
In looking at the curriculum, I know that the Wisconsin standard is, 7th grade, that requirement begins.
Yes.
Looking at curriculum for lower levels, like starting in kindergarten, first, second, third grade, and I know this is really high level here, but like what are some of the biggest roadblocks that you see as far as Menominee Falls being able to offer that to our students at a younger grade?
Oh gosh, I would love that. I don't know what the roadblocks are, probably costs, I don't know, but we've always, been proponents of that. And if you look in the standards, you'll see there's a really cool chart in here that shows the progression of students, how far they can get.
Yeah, I saw that.
Did you see that? Yeah.
And the
it's-
research shows,
Yeah.
starting, like kindergarten
makes
is ideal,
sense.
but before third grade is that
Yes.
getting to proficiency level in high school.
Yep,
And I think, our world is getting smaller and having our students more prepared. And by learning one language, let's say in elementary and middle, it's gonna be easier for them to learn even another language than in the high school level, and they could
yes,
potentially graduate being bilingual.
exactly.
Okay,
Yep,
so,
we're always trying to encourage them, like, hey, feel free to add on, German or add on Spanish, or if you have room in your schedule, why not take more than one language? And so, if they start younger, it's even easier to do that, and
and developmentally, it's actually staggering, like the chart that you have in
Yes.
front of you, just the numbers
Yep.
of when they start K to third is
Yep.
kind of that
makes a big
target.
difference.
It does make a
Yep.
big difference.
Even if exposing them, like, not even if it's like a daily thing, if it's like even weekly, is that beneficial?
Oh,
I
definitely,
like elementary,
Yeah.
little kid level.
definitely.
Exactly.
Yes. They're little
It's actually at the
sponges.
30,000 feet level where I would definitely say that I'm a huge proponent of that, introducing it earlier, because,
Yeah.
I'm the byproduct of actually learning 2 languages at one time.
Yeah.
So there is a huge benefit, and also there's also studies that neurowiring, synonymous to actually learning like, music,
Yes.
kids playing music, so
Yep.
it's the same thing, so I really think that on a macro level, I would like to push that.
And I think it
To
also,
try
it
to-
supports your own learning of your own language as well. It supports
Correct.
them, in all areas of their own language. So
Correct.
that, makes
Because I
sense.
think the old school philosophy used to be that they should actually secure and solidify one language and then learn the other, and how the thought process of learning it is you learn one and then you translate in your mind the second language. But I can tell you from personal experience, and actually my children too, and how I, grew up, I learned both at the same time.
Yeah.
It's very hard to explain and have somebody actually understand that, but I literally can jump back and forth between 2 tracks and not really realize that I do that.
Yeah.
And
I've
so
seen
I
that
think
too
that
with
is,
people. It's
yeah, and I
amazing.
think it's extremely beneficial,
Yep.
especially now,
Yeah.
for our children and what Sarah mentioned about our world becoming smaller, and it is very typical and very common for kids in other countries to be bilingual.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like
It's
we
very
are at a
common.
huge disadvantage here. I'm not sure why it's not trending more that way.
Yeah.
And, looking at people that travel, or come to our country, even just on business ventures are, they speak English fluently.
Yep, yep.
Because they start at such a young
Yeah.
age.
My 23-year-old niece, this is a little tidbit, my 23-year-old niece is moving to South Korea to teach English.
Oh,
To
wow.
a little kid.
That's
And it's
neat.
like a big business out there.
Wow.
And the
We just
strategic
talked about it
planning
last
as
time.
well,
Yeah, the
and
strategic
the
plan
last
coming
meeting
up
for
Would be a
curriculum.
great time for us to have those conversations.
Right.
So just to swirl that in your mind.
Yeah,
yes.
Cause I
I think David, you took notes, right? To
Yeah,
be part of our
Yeah,
conversation.
he's got a note right there.
I'm just
Is it in
quickly
English or
throwing a
Spanish?
shout out to Kim because she is an amazing leader with continuous improvement with her whole team. She's an
Great.
exemplar model and her whole team is on board because of her, so yes. Yep.
Thank you.
We're gonna try to
There's
push
also a nice chart too in the Wisconsin standards that has a continuous improvement bubble. I don't know if you saw that on there, and there's a lot of language in there around that, so that's kind of cool that it's, built right into the standards. So,
Okay,
yeah.
so, very good.
Sure.
Any other
Definitely.
questions or comments?
We definitely wanna push it down to them.
Yeah, I would definitely love to see this.
Yeah, our sixth graders they just love it. They eat it up. They get so excited about it. It's, their introduction to what languages, are offered, and they're so excited, and, you can imagine.
And even just that cultural diversity, right? Like learning how other people live, that's kind of how the lessons start and then it grows into language. And I just think it is definitely a good way to have well-rounded students.
Sponges.
They are
Yes.
sponges.
Yep.
They learn very quickly.
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah,
So I think we
And
should
it's
just
fun.
take advantage of that.
yeah,
So,
agreed.
And it'll give them the edge up. I really do believe that. I would be definitely a proponent of being, one of the few public schools in the area that actually can push that forward for our students. I think it would be something that would bring people into the district as well.
Yeah, I agree. Amazing.
Yeah.
Great.
Alrighty, well, thank you, Kimberly.
Yeah, you
Thank you very
bet.
much.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Do you, oh, we gotta make an action.
We have to vote. That's why I was just
I forget.
This is the only form
I just like the
of vote tonight.
conversation and I forget it one day. Okay, so I need a motion to
I'll
move
motion.
to approve the proposed Wisconsin standards for world language. And
I'll
Nina
motion.
should go first.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it is passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Good job.
Very well done.
Bye.
Thank you, appreciate it. Have a good night.
That was very easy to understand, so thank you.
Yeah.
So, no more formal votes needed.
Okay, good.
So just discussion the
All
rest of the
discussion,
night.
okay.
Yes,
Oh,
so
boy.
go ahead.
Okay, so we have Act 20, I almost said ACT.
It does look like that, yes.
Act 20 literacy update.
Yes, so as you know, the state of Wisconsin passed Act 20 over the
Mhm.
summer, which introduces some new literacy requirements. And so we have spent quite a bit of time internally, excuse me, working on understanding the new requirements and beginning some implementation planning. But we had not really brought that information here. So tonight, we're gonna do a brief and very high level overview. There will be more coming along the way, but we just wanted to kind of get started tonight. But in the interest of time and just all the other things we have going on and knowing more will be coming, we'll just do super high level tonight. So I'm happy to reintroduce Michelle Strupp, who is our elementary literacy coordinator, and then introduce to you Heidi Spingola, who is our secondary literacy coordinator here at the end. This is, she's her first year here in the district, but she has been a literacy coordinator in West Bend, and so has lots of experience she's bringing to the district. And so the two of them have really been working on this, as well as I've been a part of the team, and then Meg Formolo, our intervention teacher leader, has also been a part of the small group that's really been kind of dissecting this piece. So I'll let them go ahead and get started, and
Okay.
then definitely ask questions
Okay.
along the way.
All right, so with that high level overview with Act 20 is basically reading instruction in kind of public schools in Wisconsin and what is that for? And so we started out tonight with a table up here, a graphic for you. The law basically identifies 9 areas for reading instruction that need to be included in our practices going forward. And so they are located down the, I guess I'll call it second column there under the K through 3 heading. We brought this graphic in for a couple of reasons. First thing, I'll talk a little more about what each of them are in the K3 heading, and then I'll talk about how it goes across. So the first component up there is phonological awareness. That is a component of literacy learning that includes students being able to hear sounds and auditorily manipulate them, absent of seeing any print. So it's really just that idea of hearing and listening and speaking and of those components of their practice, which then transforms down into number 2, that phonemic awareness. So now that we know kind of how to form those sounds, how to manipulate those sounds, now we attach them to the letters that they go with and kind of how is that working together, which then takes us into the next part, phonics, which is now how are we applying it at that word level. So how are we taking things and blending them into words, segmenting words, doing all of that work there. So those are 3 building blocks that go into the beginning part of Act 20. And then the 4th part is building background knowledge. We all know that students are really more able to make better connections to things from their text comprehension-wise when we build strong background knowledge. So that's a component, followed by oral language development. So making sure we're being aware of the speaking and listening opportunities students have, their opportunities for them to form complete thoughts, how to communicate those thoughts effectively for different audiences. Number 6 there being vocabulary building. So that idea that we need to make sure that our students understand the different words that we use in our academics day in and day out. And those can be really content specific words, like an idea of addition or subtraction, or they could be kind of broad academic words, something more like the idea of compare or contrast, words that go across multiple disciplines, but you use them regularly and making sure we're building that vocabulary knowledge. And then 7 and 8 kind of go a little bit hand in hand with that instruction in writing and that instruction in comprehension. So that ability to comprehend is your ability to make meaning from something you read, and that ability to write is making meaning in something that you are printing. So those 2 things have to work synonymously and reciprocally with each other in an overall literacy program. And then finally, that number 9, reading fluency. So making sure that our students can read not just with an appropriate rate, but with appropriate intonation. So like making sure their voice sounds right as they read, or making sure they're speaking for the right type of audience, pausing appropriately, all of those pieces. So those 9 areas are what make up the law. What we have been looking at here as Michelle and I and Meg and Amy have been planning is not just how does that impact K3, but how does that impact the K-12 system, which is the reason for this graphic up here, so that you can see like, yes, those first 2 areas are much heavier at the K3 level. Occasionally they do go beyond that K3 level based upon some students' needs, but making sure that we're really in tune to the other 7 areas then, going across all levels, and making sure that we're taking those into consideration as we do any of our ongoing literacy and English work throughout our time.
So the law, since it's early literacy, really speaks to that K3, but it has impacts all across the system.
So how are the exceptions applied to category of students that are like English learners and also special needs?
This is making sure that we are providing instruction in all 9 of those areas, and then we would offer differentiated supports within that as needed based upon what those students need.
Yeah, because all of those at different times aren't necessarily appropriate for someone learning English, for example. So, and that is taken into consideration.
Okay.
So then if you could keep
Yeah.
going for me, thank you,
going.
Dana. So then what areas is the district planning for? So the first area that the district is planning for is around leadership and teacher training. So Act 20 requires us to engage in training for our specific leaders within the system as well as specific teachers within the system. And the law requires a certain timeline to begin that. So you'll see here kind of a comparison, the leader side first. We need to make sure that we have that completed by July 1st of 2025 for leaders. It's a 6-day required training, and that would include K-3 principals and district reading specialists. There might also be other leaders that would be involved in that, but those are the required members. And teachers, on the other hand, then they do not need to start until July 1st, 2025. So making sure we're training up our leaders first and then bringing our teachers in alongside. The teacher training would be roughly 40 hours per teacher, and that would include our K-3 teachers as well as a requirement, special educators and EL teachers, and making sure that they have that required training. And right now where we're at is looking at exploring what training options exist from the list that Wisconsin has provided to see what might be the best fit for our system here and kind of working to narrow that down to bring future thoughts back to the group.
And that timeline for teachers is a little different than what was originally in the law, so
That's
there's been a shift even since, because obviously this is gonna take time for us to plan, how are we going to conduct that training, is it gonna be face-to-face, is it gonna be hybrid, how are we going to compensate teachers for those time, all of that is going to need to, planning is going to need to happen, so districts, I think, gave some feedback that to get that done by 2025 is gonna be pretty quick turnaround, so in budgeting for this, because there's not compensation within the law for this, so districts will have to fund this, so we need to do some careful planning around that, so as we're vetting those training options, that will help us figure out what those next steps are around timeline and cost, et cetera, yeah.
Do they offer a grant or anything?
Not for this piece.
Okay.
There is a grant, some opportunity to be reimbursed for curriculum materials.
Okay.
Yeah, so the law really is hitting 3 bucket areas. So this would be the one bucket area is doing the leadership and training. And then the second bucket area is curriculum. And so like Heidi was speaking to, we have to make sure that our curriculum is science aligned. And the science line comes in regards to those 9 areas that they are present in the curriculum. So the DPI is formulating a list of possible curriculums that you could adopt. You don't have to adopt those curriculum that they have on the list, but you just have to ensure that those 9 areas are being addressed in your curriculum. So that list was originally going to be published in December, and now they have pushed it back to February 2024. And then that list will be updated on a yearly basis, and there is, like Amy just spoke to, there is a pool of money that the state has set aside, and they say they'll reimburse you to some extent if you pick a curriculum off of that list, but we have to be realistic that, you have the whole state, and so we're not really sure about how much we would get really reimbursed.
My understanding is that districts would submit, here were our costs for this, and then
Yes.
DPI would say, here's our pool of money, and then divide it accordingly, and you'll get a portion.
Yeah.
Now, our current plan, as we're doing a curriculum adoption, I'm jumping ahead, what Michelle's gonna share with you, of course, that we're going through that review process right now and have an update for you here in a few minutes. Our plan, though, is to use the last of the ESSER funding. That would mean that we would not be eligible at this time for that reimbursement because we're using grant funds for that. Now, any future purchases then, if we've selected a curriculum that's on their list, which is our intention, then would be as we're refreshing materials or buying for additional classrooms and things like that. And those would be
With
eligible.
respect to Act 20 funding, I was on a meeting with most of the superintendents in the state, and it's drastically underfunded.
Correct.
I mean, it's not an unfunded mandate, it's a drastically underfunded mandate.
Because in my research, it says that maybe you reimburse up to 50%.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not saying whole lot.
That's
I'm
not-
like, making a sale up to.
It's
so
for-
I didn't say there was, she said $50 million in the bill.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
it could be like with the coupon, you get 5. No.
Yeah.
Right.
If you do the math.
Like
So basically, we're probably thinking that we're gonna be funding most of it, so with the
Yes.
mindset that we were actually going to have to come up with it, then the reimbursement is just a bonus.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
That is the best way to characterize it,
Yeah,
that
that's the smartest way.
the vast majority of the funds are gonna be coming from
On
local
the fund,
sources.
okay.
yeah, so we're going into it knowing that.
And so like Amy said, currently we are going through a curriculum review and looking at and going through that process.
Okay.
Which we'll talk to you about in just a
Yeah.
just a minute, just a bit.
Let's do it.
Then really the last bucket would be assessment. So the state is going to provide a screener, a vendor for a screener. And that screener is provided to the K-3 students. And they will have to take that 3 times a year. 4K is also in this, we don't have that in there, but they will provide a screener vendor for 4K and that will be 2 times a year. So like within the first 45 days, I believe at the beginning of the year and before the last 45 days of the end of the school year. Let's see what else. That goes into effect right away at the beginning of next year. And then from that screener, we will take students who scored in the 25th percentile or lower, and then we need to do some diagnostic assessments with them. So really what we're doing is we're doing a deeper dive, like you could think of the screener being a thermometer, the temperature gauge, and then the diagnostic assessments would get down to the root of where maybe that child is really struggling in one of those 9 areas. And then we have to decide of how we would respond and provide some type of services or like just assistance. So either like how are we going to provide teaching or support, or where would that put that child in regards to intervention maybe. So it kind of just has to be vetted that way.
And
So
then,
right now, oh, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Right now, we're just waiting because the state hasn't provided that screener to us. We don't have a choice about it. They will give us the screener, the vendor who will provide it, and I believe it is being paid for,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
that
it
is
is
being,
being paid for.
the screener will be paid for, the diagnostic piece will not.
Not, yeah.
We will fund that, but the screener will be,
I mean, it makes sense to make it all consistent through the whole state, to really look,
and we used to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
that, a few
Yeah.
years ago
Yes.
we did.
okay,
Right, it used to be like PALS.
PALS,
yeah.
If you don't, if
okay.
you remember that
Yeah.
used to be, and then I think DPI changed it, just saying you could use PALS or your district had approved that you had early literacy assessments that hit certain areas
Oh,
in
okay.
place.
And they
Yes.
still do under that plan provide some reimbursement. If you, like in my old district, we continued to purchase PALs and then I would submit that and we would get reimbursement. Here we have our own that we've developed and so we haven't needed to have that additional cost paid for at this point. But everybody will be back to everybody having the same one, so.
Mhm.
So the only other piece I would add to this that we'll talk about at a future time is just for those students that who score below the 25th percentile.
Yeah.
And then we do that additional diagnostic work and we find that they need more intervention and a personal plan. There are some pieces of the law that then dictate how that goes and there's some
Okay.
summer school planning and things like that that's a little bit later on. So that's not currently something that we're planning for, but will be pretty shortly. After we get some additional information.
Eventually, it just sets up the guardrails and it's up to the owners of the district to manage it themselves and
Yes.
address the needs of their own school district and
Yes,
students. So
yes, so yes,
it's
there's
on us.
some requirements, but
to
then the
pay for it.
implementation of it.
Okay.
And I think they will provide some support in what that personal reading plan should look like and a template and things like that.
Oh, I'm sure,
So we'll have
like
some,
layouts
we'll have
and-
some assistance and some ideas of what that intensive summer school should look like and those kinds of things, so.
Yeah, because my understanding is like it'll just give guidance
Mhm.
and then we kind of
Yes, we
tailor
have
it
some
to
flexibility
what,
within that, but the
suits our
expectation is that we do it.
Okay, interesting. To be continued, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
stay
this is
tuned.
not the last time they will be here
Yeah.
to talk, they have their
Yeah.
work cut out for them, so we all do, I'm part of that team too, but grateful to have experts in these two ladies.
Okay, well, thank you, no motion.
No, we're not voting
Yeah,
this
no.
up around, this is an
All right.
expectation, so.
Sounds good,
Thank you.
moving right along
Thank
to
you, ladies.
K-12 ELA Curriculum Review and Standards Alignment.
Yes, so again, Heidi and Michelle, we just kind of wanted to separate this more for if somebody was looking
Yeah.
for it later,
Yeah.
to be able to see that this is a separate but very much connected or related piece. There is a lot happening We're gonna talk about ELA here and then we'll jump into social studies, and I just want to let you know kind of where we are generally, because a lot has happened in a short period of time, and a lot has been happening behind the scenes. So as you're listening to these updates, we've had the opportunity to do a lot of work. They'll talk the detail. But we also have gotten, as you can see behind you, we have been able to start looking at resources, and we're able to capitalize on Monday's professional development day for our secondary schools. And then yesterday we were able to spend a little time with some elementary teachers on a curriculum review team. So the resources that are starting to rise to the top as far as what we would like to pursue for a pilot. So I'm gonna let them kind of talk about details, but as we're talking, I would encourage you to be listening to what you're hearing and what you've been able to look at from the links that we provided the other day. Because we probably, traditionally what we've done in this process is we've gotten kind of verbal approval from the committee for like the top 2 to pilot, knowing that over the pilot allows us a good several months to really dig in and vet these resources and have teachers teach them and get you opportunities to dig into them like we did with mystery science last year before we bring a recommendation forward. So we kind of have a decision tonight. Do you feel comfortable with what they share as far as where we are in the process, that we can green light some resources for a pilot knowing that we'll be digging deeply? Or do we have questions? Do we want to take time to really look at resources? Looking at our timeline, we would really like to go into January being ready to pilot. So I guess my request would be either we feel comfortable green lighting tonight, which is a quick turnaround. Again, we just had the opportunity to take advantage of having vendors in yesterday and even this afternoon, or meeting in a week or two to have a short meeting to kind of finalize where we go so that we can begin working with vendors and getting materials here through that holiday break into January.
So piloting from 4 down to 2, right?
So we would just pilot 2. So these teams looked at anywhere from 4 to 5 different resources and have, in most cases, not all, but they have a couple that are rising to the top. That they're like, these are the 2 that make sense for us to pilot. We would have teachers, different groups of teachers pilot different resources. And then that would give us, that's where we really do our vetting. We're like trying it out and digging deeply into every unit and asking more detailed questions and having full access to the resources. And then we would come with a recommendation, and in order to meet the ESSER funding deadline, we really need to bring that to you in April. So we're just looking at trying to get a really good pilot timeline.
Okay.
So that's, I guess, a little bit of the urgency. So before they got in, I just wanted to preface that. I wasn't sure even last week when we posted these that we were gonna get to this place, but I think we're there. Each group's in a little different place. Elementary ELA is not there yet.
Okay.
But the others are getting closer. And everybody's in an okay spot for where they are. So everybody has done good work, so. But I just wanted to put that up front so as you're listening, you can
As
be
we're listening.
thinking
Okay.
about that.
Alright, sounds
But I will also say that if you're like, I need more time, totally understandable. Again, we're just timing of,
discussing.
we're just discussing. So
Okay.
yeah, the timing is just such that here we are. So,
Okay.
all right, enough of my talking. I'll let Michelle and Heidi continue.
So really the purpose is just to let you know where we're currently at in the process, and like Amy said, I think with ELA and with social site, like we're all kind of in different spots. We're going through the process that we need to, but it's just kind of navigating it. I think a little bit with elementary, with the DPI having that list of the curriculum, we're kind of waiting on that, but I mean, basically we looked at ed reports and we've networked with other districts, and so there are some that are rising to the top, and now that got pushed to February, like we kind of have to maybe approach it a little bit different, but still I think we're going to be okay proceeding as we kind of originally planned. So you can go to the there we go. So we first wanted, before we even get into that, I forgot about this, we wanted to come back, we had adopted the ELA standards last
December.
Thank you.
About a year ago.
So we just wanted to swing back to that to give you an update as to currently where we're at and what has been done in regards to that. So since they were adopted, we have taken time with the teachers to provide some professional learning opportunities around the standards and do like a deeper dive with it. So there was some professional learning days where the teachers got together K-5 and they looked at the standards. We identified essential standards, which means we teach all the standards. But which ones do we feel at certain grade levels that we need to identify that students need to have like so-called mastered, that we really wanna make sure they're proficient on, because then when they go to the next grade level, that grade level can stand on it, knowing that it's ensured they have those skills, and then we keep standing. But you still teach all the standards, we're not eliminating standards. So they identified what grade level essential standards they were, and then they developed like I can statements around that. So it put them into like student-friendly language that students would understand what they're working on and learning. And then from that, we took the standards and we looked at how that currently those standards aligned with our resources. And then from that, they did some refinements. So are there some gaps in our resources that maybe we need to refine and do some lessons to fill those gaps? And then talking about our assessments. So that is really the process that where we're at right now. Looking at our curriculum review, then all of our curriculum, that is one of the things we look at right now. Like where are the standards and how is that curriculum aligned with the current ELA standards? So it's one of our indicators that we look for on our checklist for our curriculum review.
Yes, so as we're looking at curriculum, we've got that list of indicators that we're looking at very carefully, and they need to meet. No curriculum's gonna be all of them,
Nope.
but we want them to meet as many as possible.
So the elementary level where we're currently at with the curriculum adoption is we developed a tentative timeline, which I'll speak to next. So we've kind of mapped things out in regards to taking that end goal of having a decision by April and going backwards. We have a curriculum committee formed with pilot teachers assigned, so we're all ready to be ready with that group of individuals. I have taken time to research different ELA curriculums, so getting on ed reports and seeing which ones have gotten the like green light, they say it, then reaching out to other districts and seeing what other districts either have, some districts have already adopted new curriculum. Some districts are currently in a pilot process and they're piloting too. Some districts are in the same situation that we are at and they're in a current review and they're looking into ones too. So it was just networking with other districts around the area and seeing where they're at and then what they are investigating and looking into. And if they're currently having certain curriculums, getting some feedback. Like where are you seeing the strengths in this curriculum? What are some gaps that you're having? Talking about the support that the specific vendor provides. So what kind of professional learning does that vendor provide to us and how have they been to work with you? So that's all important, right? When you're bringing things in to know that. We developed teacher and family surveys. So the teacher survey, they just finished up before Thanksgiving break. So we are taking time right now to review that survey. The family survey will go out, I believe, next week. And then the families will have like about 2 weeks to finish the surveys up. So we at the elementary level just waited a little bit because the social studies one went out and we didn't want to like have confusion. So we wanted that one to go out and get completed and then send out the ELA one. So it wouldn't be like this, we're getting like different confusion on getting it filled out. And then I have contacted some vendors around the top ones that are surfacing and have gathered some sample materials. So I have like about 3 different curriculums sitting in my office right now that are waiting to get opened up and dug into. And then here's the tentative timeline with the caveat that things could change depending on how things roll out. But so right now, we're in that curriculum review process, which is kind of addressing the things that I just spoke to. We're hoping then that between that January and February time that we have landed on 2 curriculums to pilot, and to bring those in and then have like just a mini training so the teachers have an understanding of those 2 different curriculums that are gonna pilot it, and then start piloting it. You can see it right in the middle of that is when DPI should come out with their curriculum list.
So we'll see how we did.
Yeah. And then, I'm sorry, that's when we kind of be going through the process of actually like looking and approving the 2 pilot resources. And then we're looking like in the end of February through March where we'd actually take it and at least have 1 unit that we would have piloted with some mid-pilot like check-in times. Hopefully then by April, we would be able to have a consensus and land on one and then bring it to you with a recommendation of that would be the one we wanna adopt.
So you could still pick a curriculum, like to be clear, like you can still pick a curriculum even though DPI says, but you're maybe kind of hoping it would be on the list or?
Yeah.
Well, but we're not also bound to actually.
No, I know,
Right,
but
that's true. We just need to make sure it has those 9 components.
exactly,
Yeah.
that's what you're looking for. And
We're
yeah.
not required, so that's.
Yeah, we
Right.
aren't.
No, but
And
I was just curious.
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
how you
So
play
the
that
curriculum
role.
that we're currently using, how does that line up with the 9 components?
Mhm.
I think there are some gaps in it.
Okay,
Mhm.
and so what districts were you like networking with and talking to about like the curriculum that they've been using and experiencing?
Yeah, so I think I reached out to Elmbrook, Cedarburg, Wauwatosa, and Oconomowoc.
they're in a pilot right now,
Okay.
so a good
Alright,
range of
yeah,
folks near us.
okay.
How about those next door, like Hamilton?
In Germantown.
Or like what we would consider benchmark.
I can look at those, I
Benchmark
think,
school district?
Germantown is in a pilot right now,
yeah,
for their K-8 schools. So they are, they identified resources at the end of last school year to pilot, throughout the first semester of this school year.
So I wanna be able to compare with like those benchmark school districts that have the same socioeconomic, students, et cetera.
Right.
How they fare with the curriculum.
I think I know which one Hamilton is using, I can get it confirmed, I don't wanna
Right,
speak to
and I-
say for sure, but.
Right, and I've got it on my list.
Yeah.
So I have a list of CISA 1 districts. So
Okay.
I do believe they were potentially gonna be piloting, I could be wrong. I'd have to look at my list, which I won't do now, so.
Sure.
And that is one of the challenges, there are a lot of districts in pilots right now, so you ask them what they're using, many of them have been using what we were using, and so they're also in that same place, that's what's making that piece a little bit trickier.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, everyone's like in the beginning stages, some
Sure.
districts started like one district that I was consulting with, or 2 of them, they started last year. Going through and vetting and doing like the whole curriculum review process, and then brought 2 curriculums in to pilot at the beginning of this year. So,
They also probably didn't do a full standards adoption mid-year last year either, right? Maybe it's a lot to do a full standards
That's
adoption
true,
and then
that's
be like, we're gonna pilot these next year.
yeah,
right, so
Right.
it could be, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. Do you think
Yeah.
other schools have they probably adopted theirs a little sooner?
We were later in adopting the ELA standards than some of the
Just a
surrounding
little
districts.
Like 10 years.
Yeah.
Two, we were,
Okay.
so I do feel like we're at least a year behind, where I would have liked, again, hindsight 2020, but it's okay.
And then you had mentioned like the ed report, is that something that DPI looks at then too?
Yes.
Okay,
That's a piece that they will consider, and kind of the information we've been given from CISA is if you look at what's green on ed reports,
Okay,
that's a good
Good
place to
indication
start. That's a
of-
good
okay,
indication
yes.
of those pieces. By contrast, what we are currently using is not green on ed reports.
Mhm.
so.
Okay.
Know
Room
anybody
for
on that council?
improvement.
I do not know anyone on that council, no. I don't have privy to anyone on the
I'm just
council.
kinda curious. All right,
I do know,
very-
and one of the vendors that I talked to yesterday, said that they were on their way to Madison to drop off the resource
Oh,
for the committee to look at, so there's a lot of moving parts on that end too.
interesting.
Okay.
Okay, very good.
And just one question, I'm pretty sure this is accurate, but we're using Lucy Calkins right now, right?
Units of study.
Right.
That's the elementary level. I mean, there's different levels, right? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, we're using that, the reading and writing curriculum, K through 5, and then, units of study for phonics, K2.
What are your thoughts on Lucy Calkins?
I think that there are some things that are very powerful about how we go about teaching literacy. And I think it's been tricky because unfortunately, through press and stuff, she hasn't been the curriculum hasn't been highlighted well, but I also feel there are gaps then also too. So I think we have to be cognizant of those gaps, and if those gaps are too big to fill, then we have to make sure that we're providing something that doesn't have as big of gaps.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, so the next one's coming next, it's just we'll take time to review the teacher survey results and the family ones when they're done, and then get the curriculum review process going with the committee. And there will be staff meetings at each elementary building to update the staff as to where we're at. So communication and transparency is really important so that staff knows what the process is and where we're at. And then finalizing the pilot plan and getting us going on that.
so that's a lot happening. It's good work, so.
So then in regards to 612, we have a lot going on too.
Correct,
Sorry.
and I just wanted to make note that when we started this process, it was really 6-8. And then with feedback from both Heidi and Mr. Gebauer at the high school, we talked about going ahead and adding 9-12. That was kind of on my radar for next year, just knowing how much we were taking on. But I do think there's some advantage to looking at it 6-12. And with having Heidi's position this year, I think we had the capacity to do it, where when we started, I wasn't sure we would. So that's why 6-12, where I think we had previously talked about 6-8. So go ahead.
So also starting us off with that standards alignment. So standards were adopted about this time last year, as you know. And then those teams kind of prior to my joining, and then I kind of came in to help them on the tail end of this. They have been doing some summer work and some last spring work and early fall work here to review those standards and really think across the 4 areas. So the reading, the writing, the speaking and listening, and the language. And they are working to kind of, again, identify those priority standards or those essential standards. Which ones are we really saying, like, kids have to master this by the time they leave this grade level? And then looking at that vertical alignment of those, and then writing aligned I can statements. Again, we're not saying we aren't teaching the other standards, but so as the standards spiral through, how are we making sure we're intentionally hitting those that have really high leverage at these specific grade levels? So that's been the work of those teams up to this point. And then moving forward, just kind of an overview of our timeline here as well. So in October, we kind of did that review of the standards, kind of learned about the process and started getting going on those things. Also doing some vendor reviews, seeing what other districts were using. And then now here in November, we have collected samples and started to narrow down our vendor samples, and I'll talk more about those in a moment. Our goal then is in December to kind of finalize which pilot vendors we would want to go with, which units out of those vendors' resources we'd want to go with for piloting, and then which teachers would be piloting them, with the goal to host all the training and the receipt of those materials in January, to then pilot throughout the months of February and March. So 3rd quarter pilot. again, to bring things back to you in April for any potential final recommendations for the board there based upon the results of that work. So to get us ready for those curriculum reviews and adoptions, I had started out by going through again what got a green rating on Ed Reports, as well as looking at which curricular resources that had those green ratings met all of the 4 standard areas that are in the Wisconsin standards for the 612 band. And then looking at what other districts were using and identifying some alignment options there that have 612 capability. So at the time that this was prepared before Thanksgiving, we had 4 top options here that have 612 capability. And there is also a 5th option that's not listed on here for 6-8, and that is Amplify ELA that we heard from this afternoon. So just to give you a little perspective on how that is going. So Amy, can we jump ahead a slide and then can I come back to this?
For sure.
Perfect, thank you. So prior to getting into the pilot, we took time to survey families at the 6-8 level and the 9-12 level about what they felt were some of the most powerful things for a ELA lesson and ELA engagement for their children. And these were the top 3 things that rose up at both the 6-8 level and the 9-12 level. So really our families want to make sure our students have interactive experiences, that they have the opportunity to engage with a variety of books and text types, and then to make sure that they have opportunities to read and write in each unit. And at the same time that we surveyed families, if you'll jump one more slide ahead, Amy, we surveyed staff. And so kind of asked staff, what are those big things we know we need for our learners to help them excel in their ELA development? And so these were some of the things that rose out of that staff survey. So lesson plans that really provide some explicit examples for the whole group, the ability to modify lessons for students that need that modification, those formative assessment options, so kind of those checks along the way before they get to the end to make sure that our students are understanding. The ability to differentiate options, so meaning maybe there's 2 different ways you can demonstrate your learning. Perhaps I could write a paper, perhaps I could give a speech. Just different ways to differentiate learning as an end product and a process along the way. Making sure that resources are of current relevance to student interests as well as their developmental level. Just as the parents had the opportunities to read a variety of genres and text formats, and then also adding on to that the ability to write in a variety of genres and for a variety of purposes, and then making sure we're building in that interactive grammar practice and embedded vocabulary instruction. So you'll see woven through there are those kind of 7 areas that carry across from Act 20 into the upper levels. So that was really good to make sure that we have that grounding our work. So Amy, if you'll bounce back to that slide. Thank you. We used that survey data then when we reviewed these 4 publishers on Monday to kind of say what of that survey data are these publishers able to support us with. And so through that work, we have a couple vendors that are rising to the top at different levels. And at this point, what we are doing is I am following up with those vendors to say, here's our follow-up questions we have before we say, yes, we want to commit to a pilot. But we kind of have it, I guess, rather narrowed down pending the answers to those questions which were submitted to those vendors for response. So at this time at 6-8, so the middle school level, My Perspectives by Savis is rising to the top as one of their top choices. And then another of their top choices was what we saw this afternoon, which was Amplify ELA. And we can get you that updated link in that with that information there so you can see that. And then they're kind of, prior to this afternoon, their kind of third choice then was Into Literature by HMH. So those were kind of the top 3 of the middle school level. The top 2 of the high school level then for potential pilot would again be My Perspectives by Savis. And then the second one for them would be Study Sync by McGraw-Hill. Over on the tables here for you, we do have some of the Study Sync materials and the My Perspectives materials. The Into Literature we have available that we can, but I think we're going to kind of wait and see what comes from the Amplify ELA piece. Because the Amplify ELA piece was kind of decided the Tuesday before Thanksgiving break with the vendor review today, I don't have the hard samples of those with us today, but once we have them, we can make them available. Just lots of Black Friday shopping, and UPS is a little delayed in getting things everywhere right now, so we're working on it. But those are kind of the resources that would be pending, like I said, the responses to those vendor questions that we would be looking into piloting. We would do a unit from each resource, so 2 resources, the top 2 at North, and then the top 2 at the high school. And we'd have a team of teachers, 1 at each grade level that would pilot one, and 1 at each grade level that would pilot the other, with the opportunities for teachers to get in and see each other's classrooms, as well as then engage with other neighboring districts and communities that are using those and have been implementing for a little bit longer. How are things going and getting that information? And then we would also be at a slight advantage because we're a step behind some of our neighboring districts to say, what did you pick and why? Because most of them will be making their kind of choices here around the semester time. So that gives us some additional collaboration opportunities with our neighboring partners.
And all of these are currently used in neighboring
Correct.
districts within Waukesha County, I believe,
Yes.
if I remember correctly.
Yep,
So
I would
what-
say Waukesha, Ozaukee, Washington County is their, all of them are being used.
When you're looking at curriculum just in general, do you look at kind of like the other districts' achievement scores or where they land to say, ooh, what are they using? We want that. How do you come to the conclusion of like, we're gonna seek out what this district is doing?
I would say we try to cast a broad net, what is everybody doing?
Okay,
And then kind of look for some trends and things in there and kind of narrowing down. I mean, everybody in the area knows which districts are very high performing continuously. So we do take that into consideration, but then we also look at other comparable factors that might be different demographics, different background knowledge pieces, all of those pieces that might be setting us apart from any neighboring communities to make sure that we're picking the best thing for our students and our learners here and moving forward with that. So casting that broad net and then being able to refine as needed.
sure.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned like in the high school, the number 1 choice was my perspective is in the study sync. What criteria did, the committee look at in regards to choosing one
Yep.
over another?
Yep, so the criteria that we just, all of the resources were ranked with the same criteria and then kind of received a score on a 3-point scale, so all of these different resources. And then we went with the 2 that received the highest scores. And so the criteria that was used was the inclusion of those 7 areas from Act 20 that reached the 612 level. As well as then making sure we have, I'm gonna call it the gradual release framework. So making sure we have opportunities for students to get whole group instruction, have some opportunities for guided practice, and then opportunities for independent application, because we know that that's how the brain learns. The brain needs that transfer opportunity to make sure that it really gets into long-term memory and they can apply it to other settings. And then those things that came up out of the parent and staff surveys were also included in that ranking criteria. So how student engaging was it? Did it include reading and writing throughout the different units? Did it have text, a variety of text types, like is it all just articles, or do they have opportunities to see articles and books and fiction and nonfiction and poems and making sure those things? So all of those pieces were what was put into place for our review process. And then I think did I have one more slide even? Yep. So we kind of, this has gotten turned around a little more quickly than what we anticipated when we put this together. But so our next priority step really now is kind of, like I said, finalize those conversations and waiting for those vendors' responses to our final questions back to them to kind of say, yep, these are the 2 and we are definitely ready to move forward, and these are the 2 and we're definitely ready to move forward, or do we have any need for further conversation to go from there? But I would say with a pretty high level of confidence that I believe those vendor responses will come through and that we would want to proceed with piloting those 2 resources. As Amy said earlier, every resource has, its limitations, and there's always that need to supplement and differentiate in different pieces, but that can then be, we can learn more about that throughout the pilot process.
And all of the resources we looked at had really good strengths to them. They were all good in
Yes.
different ways.
Yes.
So there wasn't anything, cause I sat in on the middle school ELA sessions on Monday, and there weren't any huge red flags with any of them, I don't think.
Yeah,
And so cost wise also too, are they all comparable or is one that is more, because obviously we're gonna have to be paying them,
We are gonna have to
so-
be paying for
that
them,
becomes-
and that's something we'd really look at in the pilot stage. And we do, I think, have funding available at this point in time that, I mean, I don't want it to be crazy, but I want us to get the right resource in the hands of kids, so. We'll work on that next. Very quickly. But,
All right, thank you.
So, do we need to discuss how to proceed or?
we can do that here,
Okay.
now for ELA for 6-12, or if you wanna wait and discuss social studies separately,
Oh, okay.
it's up to, or just discuss it all together.
Like one big lump
Make a lump, 'cause
of curriculum?
again, they're all in different,
Yeah.
slightly different places,
True,
but the same, I think, dilemma exists. And
okay,
so it's really getting a sense of what your will and comfort level is at this point. Again, we're not making a, long-term commitment at this point. We're just committing to having teachers pilot one unit of those resources and then getting full access and kind of saying to the vendors, we're committing. Sometimes there's a cost. Sometimes with digital materials, in particular, there isn't a cost, it's just gonna depend, so that's a conversation we need to have. But we factored that in, I expected that, it's gonna cost us something to do this. And, but then we will have an opportunity, you will have an opportunity to really vet the materials so that when we do come in April, we all know them very well.
So my question is, because I was on the curriculum committee, last year also too, so I know conversation of ELA has always been on the forefront.
Yeah.
And then now social studies has just kind of come up from left field. So kind of, sort of, so
Maybe a little bit, okay.
my question is, what's prompting us to kind of do both at the same time, to this extent?
So that's a great question. So elementary social studies had first come up in 2019.
Okay.
As the initial conversation. And at the time, there was discussion around developing the district's own curriculum. So there was talk about that, and then COVID and some other things, and then it resurfaced a little bit in 2021, and then at that time, there was, I think, if I remember correctly, there was a desire to again look at developing our own curriculum, and then some staff changes and things, and that didn't happen. And so when I came in, pretty quickly, science was already in process, but social studies was right behind we don't have anything to teach elementary social studies, and that's one of our 4 core areas. Like that to me is not okay, and so we need to move forward with that. And then pretty quickly, high school was starting to ask for some new resources and just this course and this course, and I said, let's hold on and let's just take a whole look at it. And middle school as well, there's 6th grade is a particular need, but there's also some really teacher developed curriculum at just 7th and 8th grade, and some of those resources are older. So it just made sense to take a look at that. I know when I think David and Caitlin were looking at funding and the ESSER funding, and Caitlin approached me and said, if we could give you this money, what would you do with it? I said, well, the 2 things that come to mind are ELA and social studies, and we'd have to figure out how to navigate that, but those are the things that really have risen to the top for me and are the next on the list. And then with the elementary law, with the literacy law, it kind of made sense that, we needed to take some action on that to make sure we were in compliance there, so.
Social studies was supposed to come up this year. The ELA was, because of the law, was an earlier push than was initially planned in the rough long-range goal.
So you were also alluding to secondary and elementary were at different stages.
Yeah.
So where are they at? In regards to stages of social studies, ELA, I think you had mentioned
Yes.
that, elementary's not there yet, or?
So
can you
elementary's not
clarify
there
that?
in terms of, the curriculum review committee has not come together to look at specific resources at the
ELA.
elementary ELA yet.
Oh, okay.
So, Secondary ELA has done that, they did that on Monday.
What
Which
about
is
social
probably a
studies?
couple weeks.
Social
apart.
That's another
that's coming up next.
Yeah.
So I've got a whole presentation to go through on that, to talk about social studies. So, but because these are both coming to you at the same time, and we're all kind of under the same timeline. So, if we're using ESSER funds for these, we need to have the materials here at the end of June. And so in order to get materials by the end of June, we need to order in April, which means I need to have information to you on all of these in April so we can make decisions.
Yeah, one of the reasons we're using ESSER funds is when I arrived, I was talking to Amy about this curriculum adoption, and then I asked, okay, what's the budget that's been set aside, and there wasn't any. And I said, oh, well, that's not good. So then we started searching for funds, we were doing some safety things with some of the ESSER funds, but at the time, there was about 1.1-ish million in ESSER funds that were remaining as leftover dollars. So at that point, I committed some dollars, a substantial chunk of that, about $500,000, to be available. But that's not based on, that was just, it could be 300,000, it could be 400,000. We know it's gonna be a big chunk of money. But we wanted to make sure to earmark dollars, one-time money, instead of recurring dollars, and to fund this process, which we have. But because we're using ESSER funds, we have some artificial timelines, not artificial, hard timelines that otherwise wouldn't exist.
It has to be by this year, right?
There's
It's for ELA also though.
Correct.
Okay.
right,
Correct.
so there's some timelines that exist if we're going to use that money.
Right.
That other districts, most districts probably, some are, but bless you, usually you don't use that kind, usually you don't have this sort of restriction.
Right.
It could
Yeah.
be June, it could be July, and
Yeah.
then, you have some flexibility.
So-
Using that federal money, there's some
right.
hard stops. And that's part of the urgency, is when I arrived, there wasn't a funding source for this, there was $0 allotted. So I didn't think that was right, so we allotted a good chunk of money to make sure that there was dollars behind a need.
So for example, like at the elementary level, if you're adopting social studies curriculum and ELA, we kind of talked about it,
Yeah.
maybe they're a little overwhelming at first.
We're gonna have to be strategic about our
Okay.
implementation of that. So ELA would come first.
Yeah.
And then, so we'd have to, because it's gonna take some training to help teachers know
Okay.
there's gonna be that new screener, they're gonna have to work to learn that. So that's gonna be the bulk of the
Yeah.
first part of the year.
Okay.
And then these social studies curriculums that we've looked at have some different options to them, and I think there's some ways that we can be strategic about, start with this piece,
Like
and
kind
we
of
can add and every
inch
piece we
Add
add,
in a little bit
every piece
or
we
phase it
add
in, yeah.
will be beneficial, because again, teachers are searching for their own materials
Gotcha.
right now. And they just don't have those solid resources, so I think anything is gonna be beneficial. But we do need to be mindful, and I'm extremely mindful of how we're going to have to be strategic and thoughtful.
And the principals are giving input on that too, okay.
So here's my thought process, are we able to, because I know you have the timeline there, April, et cetera, are we able to split it up in regards to elementary being a little bit slower on X, Y, and Z versus secondary? Because this is where I'm thinking of, I mean, David and I were actually at listening sessions also too, so I understand the secondary, they have separate teachers that teach the English social studies as opposed to elementary. They have to teach everything.
Right.
And that was one of the conversation
Yeah, it's a
point
lot.
that brought up when you and I went to the listening sessions, is there are some teachers who, one in particular that stood out to my mind, she was new to the district. I can see how stressed she was.
Yeah.
Saying that she has to now do both at the same time, and I'm very cognizant of that, and I understand that ESSER funds, and it's great that we have it and we should utilize it. We also have to be sensitive to the teachers and the people who are actually living it.
100%.
It's great for us to say it, but they live it.
100%.
And that resonated with me and how much stress that was put upon them. And then I also prioritizing
what should we emphasize, what should we look at? I'm looking at proficiency scores. ELA, you know, that to me is a priority. It's unacceptable for me to have students in our district that are at 45%. We are doing them a disservice. So even though you said that our social studies curriculum, we don't really have one, but I mean, their scores aren't too terrible. So that's where my mindset is if we can, if the, you know, secondary schools can do it and they say that they can, and I wanna hear from the teachers. I understand feedback from the principals is fine, but I wanna hear from the people who are having to actually, you know, do it. If they feel comfortable and they can actually, you know, implement it, and do it effectively, cause I would rather have us focus on a curriculum that it's stellar, that we are now benefiting students and they student versus two curriculum that we're just saying so we can use the funds or to say that we've implemented, but they're just subpar. See what, that's
Just
what I'm
to-
struggling with?
To buttress a point, we were at a listening session, it was an elementary listening session. And some of the teachers and administrators present were very adamant and concerned about the
Having a board,
nature
yeah.
of the rollout. I mean, it wasn't just a casual conversation, it was respectful and there was a lot of solid thought into the feedback. And it was about, this is great, but how do we even do this?
So I am 100%, I'm 100% in support of prioritizing ELA over social studies.
Yeah.
So just,
And in
I mean, I
particular,
guess
the
maybe we'd
elementary
have to
for
see the
me.
plan for that.
Yeah,
too.
give me
Like
like
the
the elementary,
yes.
we can do it
Yeah.
if secondary feels
Yes.
comfortable and they're good, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that down from, you know, principal down to the lower level of teachers in the classroom teaching, if they feel comfortable, they're good with implementing, they're good with a timeline and all the work that goes into it. I just feel for like in regards to the elementary school teacher, that's just a lot that they have to.
oh, 100%.
That if
And-
we're able to then stagger it. You know, like if social studies isn't a priority, then I would rather, you know, pause a little bit, let them focus on ELA and then introduce.
But all we have to do, and then maybe you can clarify this too though, with the ESSER funds, that's our deadline, there's not it's not an implementation deadline though.
Correct.
You're paying for
So
it.
Correct,
we
we are paying for
Right.
it,
So
so.
you
But
that's
I
it.
mean,
I can't let it
I'm
sit on the
not
shelf
Yeah, it's like,
forever.
oh,
But it
well, you got
doesn't
this
mean
free, you
that
know.
it has to be fully implemented September
Like,
first
No.
either.
more
We can be
of a-
strategic, and that is
A
100%
layered.
in all of the conversations
But
that
I
we've
wasn't at
had,
the listening
but I,
session too, so
Yeah.
to
And
your
I mean, it was a
point,
surprise to me, so.
I
So
I heard
understand
some,
that
I
concern too.
heard their concerns, and so
Oh,
I wanna make sure that
100%.
we are very cognizant
100%,
of
and
their
I
workload.
will support the direction I get from Mr. Munoz and the direction I get from you 100%. So, because.
I think elementary level is the sticking point.
Mhm.
You
Oh.
know,
We've had conversations about it,
yeah,
and I share and understand
Yeah.
that concern.
Yeah.
I also
Mhm.
hear the opportunity to use that funding because again, you know,
Right.
we lost $100,000 from the from the CLA budget this year.
Mhm.
And so not having that funding source to be able to make these
True.
happen at all is, I mean, to have that funding is huge.
So the forming
So-
of their own curriculum that is completely by the wayside, do they want to or
So I
is
have
it-
not heard any will to do that.
Okay.
I think that would go against what I've been hearing from you and from others about consistency.
Oh, yeah, standardized.
Standardized,
Yeah, that makes sense.
things that we can clearly
But if they have their own like
be transparent
standardization,
about. So
that might
one of
take
these
time.
things, one of the
Well,
things
I
that
think
these pieces do is they allow us to, it's easier for us to be transparent with parents about what's being taught. Cause I
Mhm.
can put links on some links on the curriculum,
True.
some of it's copyrighted, but it's just, when I'm trying to do that with
Yeah.
homegrown things,
Okay,
something's in somebody's drive and somebody else's drive and
Yeah.
it's just a person
I get
leaves and it is really complicated.
Yeah.
And
I
so
get it.
this provides some clarity, consistency, some consistent rigor that I think is what you're looking for and what you
Yeah.
will help. Just that alone, I think is gonna make a difference in our performance on assessments.
I think it's just as
Both
long as
ELA
it's
and
very
social studies.
clearly laid out, like getting solid input, which I know you will do, but like to layer that in,
100%.
phase it in to
Yeah,
some
no,
extent,
and-
and I don't know if you guys
So
have
I'm gonna
any
ask you
input.
what your thoughts are. We're talking here, but
Yeah.
do you agree with my thought
I'm representing
process?
social studies here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's nothing to apologize for. They're excellent questions, and I think we've all had those same questions and wrestlings.
Yeah.
For sure.
But then there also are times when, and I don't know what the right answer is at all, but there also are times when we think, okay, so then, let's say we wanna do this next year, when everyone's knee deep, every teacher, in being trained in learning something new. And then next year, what's on the horizon with math? So I don't know
Yeah.
when is there ever going to be, because we are behind, so there was that element too. But is it a lot?
Yeah.
I'll say from the secondary level, the way I kind of spoke with the social studies team is, I've been in the district 33 years. It was common practice that you review a curriculum every 7 years, and there's a system. Then the pandemic happened, changes in the district, and all of a sudden that just stopped. I mean, and that happened all across this country, not just here.
Yeah.
And so now we're trying to, and I know Amy's trying to get that pattern and that system going. And so it has been years that, that some of these departments have looked at their curriculum. So
Yeah.
for secondary, we're on the exact same page at middle school and high school with the literacy. We're all
I think
three.
secondary, I'm not as concerned, it's more the elementary that
and I-
that's.
Yeah, the feedback, just to reiterate that, and then go ahead, I mean, it's, I would be comfortable, just the feedback, we weren't asking curriculum questions at this listening session. But then we kind of had an end to it where we were like, is there anything else, sort of thing. And then it was 20 to 30 minutes, and this was the focus. Like, wait a minute, how do we do all of this and at one time? Like, the rollout of it, I'm sure, it'll get figured out that way, but it was a substantial, it was one of the key takeaways. We went there thinking, okay, let's, hear this, hear that. But it really was, okay, we wanna do all of this, but I don't even know if that's possible. So, it sounds like what I'm hearing, that, in terms of the tiering it or transitioning it or focus on ELA and then social studies, I'm sure it's doable. The ESSER thing is just, I was being opportunistic, made sure that Amy had a lot of money. And
So,
to be honest.
Yeah.
So, and I cut you off a little, so
No,
please.
I was just gonna say the kind of unique thing that's happening with ELA curriculums, K-12 now, as a result of this science-aligned reading instruction, is many of them are knowledge-based. So they have explicit connections to like overall world topics that have connections to science, social studies, all of those things. So one portion that could be considered, I do think there's power in hearing, the social studies debrief and things, but as we kind of map out potential timelines to go forward, if there was I'm going to say a gradual release into having both resources, it would potentially provide us with some opportunities to dovetail some of those content connections that are in the ELA curriculums now
Yeah.
with the resources that are available for social studies to make some of the implementation actually easier for teachers if the content has some alignment.
Yep.
So that could be something we could take into consideration, and then helping to lessen that load for teacher implementation, and slowing that kind of roll to make those things behind the scenes happen, to make it easier for them.
Definitely, I don't wanna stress them out when we're just.
definitely.
And I do think we need to be cognizant when we talk about ELA, we're not, it's the foundational skills, which is your phonics and word studies, it's writing and
It's a
it's
lot.
reading.
Yeah.
So we're looking at curriculums that are comprehensive, that have all three of them, so it's a unified, it's not that you have to pull and supplement. So I think that's one thing you wanna be mindful of also, it's not just like one subject, they're gonna be taking in something at the elementary level that's going to be hitting those three areas and then understanding it. And with some of the shifts, their instructional practices are going to shift. There's gonna be some shifts in their understanding of how they deliver phonics or how they deliver writing in past of how they've been doing it. So we do wanna be mindful of that also, of them at the elementary level of taking that on, and then in addition to all the other subject areas. So that we would have to be very strategic in how we go about this.
That's what I wanna make sure that
Yeah.
So
And again, like I said, the secondary I'm not really too concerned about, it's the elementary, and I wanna make sure that we are mindful in regards to their load that they actually have to, implement all this.
So 100%, and I think, again, knowing that this was the direction with the opportunity and the need, I think we've done our best to do that along the way. Would I choose to do this if,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I do, like Heidi said, think there are some opportunities with this that wouldn't be there later on because we'd be already married to either social studies or ELA. But I think we can make anything work, whatever we need to. But we're also playing catch up. So that's, so it's just a lot to consider, but we've been engaging in this work because that was the direction, but we can also pivot, we can also proceed and decide at any point, especially when we start looking at the financial pieces, do we need to hold off, do we need to move forward? Like, I feel like there are some off ramps at points if we need them to be.
So I guess my point is, I don't want, teachers to think that that's, because we are actually implementing or talking about the two, that this is the timeline that,
You're not gonna
this is
throw
what we
this
want them
on
to
the,
actually do by April. And if we can, again, I'm not saying pivot completely, but if we can slow down one in order to give them a breather to implement, like for example, priority is ELA.
totally
Let
open
them
to
pause and then do this, because eventually we're gonna have to. That's gonna be a given, but I don't wanna feel that they have to do both at the same time.
So would you be thinking by the second semester next, or like a unit or I don't know.
Yeah, so if it'll be a little resource dependent,
Yeah.
I think. Like, one of the resources that we looked at yesterday for elementary social studies had what they called a fast track. If you only have, X amount of time for social studies, which most of us do, it's not the first thing we put in the schedule.
Yeah.
Here are a few lessons in each unit that meet the state standards, thank you.
Yeah.
And so could we look at one unit some point later in the year and try just that fast track approach?
Oh, interesting.
I don't know, we'd have to really dig into it, it's too soon to know for sure.
Yeah, I think if you just give enough breathing room for ELA first, and then social studies just kind of slow walk it. I mean, my hope would be like they'd be chomping at the bit and like really want to use it, more and more, and it would just catch on
if
too.
we
Excitement
curriculum,
yesterday.
it'll be easier than what they're doing now, and that is the result we want, right?
Two things, I would say I did hear some excitement yesterday about the
Okay.
resources that they looked at.
Okay, well that,
And I do think
Yeah, we
that
haven't heard from.
providing a common
Sorry,
resource.
we're
No, this is good conversation, I'm glad we're having it. Having a common resource that comes in with a lesson plan and differentiation strategies and resources pulled in should, once teachers know the resource, should free up some time to do some of those things that they feel like they don't have time to do now. Because they're not trying to find the resource for tomorrow, they're not on Teachers Pay Teachers trying to secure something or on the internet trying to secure something. They've got it in front of them, they can be more intentional about differentiation for individual students or connecting with parents and some of those other things. That is an advantage to this over time. It obviously doesn't happen immediately when they're just learning it.
I mean, for sure,
it should over
it would be a
time.
time saver, hopefully, But we're putting the cart before the horse, we probably
Right,
should
we've
give
got
it.
let's social studies first.
It's okay. You're asking questions we won't
All right,
ask.
so,
Correct,
yeah.
we have had lots of conversation about this and appreciate that others are having that same conversation.
All right, so shall we do
Who
social
wants to go
studies?
first? Should we start secondary or you want
Secondary?
first?
Are we-
Flip a coin.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yes, thank you to our ELA ladies, I know
Elementary.
they need to
Thank
get home to
you.
their families.
You can go in sequence order. Go ahead with that.
Well, secondary's on top, so.
So we're gonna go secondary first,
That's a
here we
weird
go.
thing.
How's that?
No, middle
Who
school
did
was
that?
first, and that would be really cool.
Yeah.
But we're together.
All right,
Alright.
well, so Lynn Grimm from the high school.
And Shelley Wolf, I serve North.
And so Shelley and I are actually presenting together because we actually with Heidi have run this entire process step by step. We really started by looking at the school board policies, going through and making sure that we were attending to every piece of it. And we've kept in sync all along the way, so. So you're gonna see very similar slides to what.
Absolutely, so we'll kind of just breathe.
That's okay.
So same thing, how did we align to our standards? In spring last year, the social studies team met and they went through the standards and they ranked them based on endurance, leverage and readiness. They identified priority standards, they came up with 10, pulled an inquiry strand, and then created ICANNs and have them embedded in their units currently.
And high school, very much similar, the focus really has been around finding some resources to support the inquiry standards. I did wanna share that at the high school, all the departments, but specifically the social studies have been working on making sure their ICANNs are posted on Schoology for families, and then they use them either daily on their slides or are posted on the walls or on their whiteboards every day. So then, this is the similar timeline that you saw with Heidi. So Shelley and I did the review of the standards with the teachers, we researched comparable districts, gathered samples from vendors, surveyed teachers and families. We're gonna get to all that, did the vendor presentation, so we're in the exact same spot as what secondary literacy is at.
Yeah, our vendors, I think, were very appreciative of us.
Yes,
Because
we-
they really had
They moved
one-stop
from building to
shopping.
building on Monday.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Like, they could, and we saw a lot, it was really synchronized, yes. They brought us treats. So again, this was just showing which vendors we pulled in to have present. And North had National Geographic today come in as a fifth presentation. And so we'll go on just like, and then come back and tell you what we're liking at the moment, what's rising to the top.
Do you wanna
So
wait
let's-
with, you wanna wait with it?
Yep, let's
Okay.
wait with it because just like that
Yep.
goes in.
All right, so we did use, similar to what Heidi shared, we sent out the family surveys. Well, what I found very interesting was we sent out separate surveys and our top 4 were exactly the same between the middle school and the high school. And they actually really matched what the teachers' top, choices were as well. So for the parents, it was that interactive engagement, inquiry and exploration, interactive technology, and then again, that opportunity for their kids to read and write. So, we did include also, we used, just as in ELA, we used the criteria from the family survey and the teacher survey to build the rubric that we scored each of the vendors or textbook series with.
So these components were on the same thing when we evaluated on Monday. So that's good.
And we'll continue to use those when we do the pilot as well.
Yes. And this is what the staff surveyed, when we surveyed our staff, our social studies staff, 612, and again, same one.
Came up with top, same
On
top.
rows, isn't that interesting? So of course, it's good common sense. You want inquiry-based lessons.
Yeah.
And exactly, and student discourse. You want a variety of instructional strategies. You want differentiation and a variety of ways for students to demonstrate their learning, with just some of the highlights of that slide that you can take a look at.
So now, Amy, if you wanna switch back to the choices, yep.
So some drum roll.
Do you wanna go
Yeah.
first?
So the two that have risen to the top at North are National Geographic and McGraw-Hill. Right, yes. And Savvis was our third. It was really those two coming forward, but then Nat Geo just nudged them today.
And the two at the high school that rose to the top were the McGraw-Hill and the Savvis. Now, in all fairness, I want to share that, like when I did the research about the comparable districts and in the falls, at the high school level, it's been decades where many, many districts have done teacher created. And so there is, a dilemma of do we continue to do that, do we look, but then when they saw some of the opportunities and the resources that were available, it was pretty outstanding, some of the things that these are providing, and I feel some excitement growing there, so.
That's great.
It is, it
What was the second for 6-8? It's National Geographic.
And McGraw-Hill.
And they're already, sixth grade is already using some components of National Geographic. They have, that's the same piece in social studies.
Yes.
And just for high school, just for what it's worth, Elmbrook uses the McGraw-Hill for 3 of their 4 areas. And what I am finding with some districts, we might end up doing, US history and world history, choose this one, and government and econ choose this one, or, things like that. And that's what's,
That's what I was gonna ask.
yeah, that's what's happened in a lot of
Right?
different, that's what's happened in a lot of different
Just
districts,
level
so.
it's,
yeah.
yeah, that's pretty
That'd be a
common.
good idea.
It'll be interesting to see how it all pans out, right? They were, we did the same scoring sheets where everybody scored and we totaled it, and those were the 2 that came on top with everybody. And they were quite a bit above the other ones, so, for high school.
Okay, where am I headed? I lost my.
Oh yeah, you get multiple clicks.
And-
There you go.
Okay.
And so again, we're at the stage now where I think Amy was talking about if we're going to get that, blessing to move forward with the pilot. The team has decided how they're going to, which teachers are going to pilot which of the 2, or some might do both we're kind of figuring out the time at the high school. Some of them would like to do each of them themselves, but we're gonna have, that's where Amy and I are gonna have some conversations about how far back could we push this, because they wanna start at the beginning of semester 2 and do a unit, and then if there's time to do another unit before we would have to move forward with the kind of the next stages. But we also talked about them feeling comfortable where there's like, say, 3 different teachers that teach US history. If 2 of them each, did one and one did the other, and they can, along the way, each week, we're doing comparisons and discussing and sharing with each other. It's a smaller team than like when elementary presents. They're doing this for all those teachers. I mean, I have 9 social studies teachers that we're working with, so that communication and that trust with each other is there, so.
So any questions? Or thank you.
What
am I gonna do on purpose?
So you're talking about options in the secondary is like high school is reviewing more units and then
Well, no, they were saying, they were talking let's say Liz Borg, for example, teaching world history, if she would do 1 chapter in Savas and then the next one in McGraw-Hill, all by herself. Or if she and one of her partners she would do McGraw-Hill and the other one would do Savas at the same time with the same chapter. So that's where, or unit, whatever you say.
yeah.
So that's what we're kind of deciding right now, so, but we're waiting to get permission on all this too,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, and at middle school, they were hoping, when we chatted on Monday, they were hoping to get a sample of both. They wanted to be able to team up, so if I was 7th grade with Nina, we would be able to work National Geographic together for a unit, talk, plan, and then go on to the next one for another unit within that.
And that's what they would like to do, but then we have to
Because
look
that
at
they
the
get the
timeline.
flavor from both
Yeah.
in their own way.
One teacher might get something out of it,
Right.
versus the other that share and collaborate.
Right, so
Yeah.
that's what we're figuring out right now.
And it works better with a buddy. Do you know when something's
Yeah,
new
like
and
you
you're trying to
said,
understand
yeah.
something? So,
And historically, we've done it both ways. We've done it where each person does both, and we've done it where each person does one.
Like last year we did science, I mean,
Yeah,
we're
that's
jumping in, but we did science and we were on a timeline and we just didn't have time for that, but it worked out beautifully. And we were able to get, like, again, sticking with that rubric, like it's not about feelings and what I think it really is about the student learning and the teaching and the rigor and like,
The resources
All those
and
things
the
they put in that
standards.
survey that they
Yeah.
said they valued.
and you had multiple people weighing in, which was good. Where
yeah, you have a
they
smaller.
have 2.
Yeah.
It is.
True, so there's pros and
Too
cons
many
to
Yeah,
everything.
pros and cons,
The
yeah.
process can be a little different at secondary.
Exactly.
Whereas
Because it's owned by
elementary,
fewer.
it's just
Yeah.
more, got more people participating, so. Okay. So, yes,
I don't have any questions.
all right, well then let's get an update on where elementary is.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I'm Nina Overholser, I'm at the K2 buildings.
Angie Sardina and I'm at the 3-5 buildings.
And so again, very similar, we all were tasked with the same, job to do and the same timelines to do it in. And so you'll hear some similar timelines and things. So in the next probably about 5 minutes, you'll get an update of the work that's happened so far to date, that big picture timeline, and then the feedback summary and our next steps. So we've utilized the 4 board policies, and what's laid out in those is requirements of going through a curriculum review process, and teased out those policies into lots and lots of action steps. Laid out a large plan. You saw the same type of document and work occur in science, so we've used kind of that same process. That actually we've all used that same process and been really guided by those same 4 policies. So far to this time, we have reviewed what was currently practiced in our district in elementary science. So we looked at, the current reality. We also really dug into what our school district in Menominee Falls, what social studies standards do we have, and those are the Wisconsin social studies standards. So took a look at those. So we really wanted to be grounded in what those standards called for, and then also looked at the same timeline. So same thing of if materials need to be June 30th, that would require a board approval in April, that would, so we backtracked the same thing. So we're all kind of doing the same work on the same timelines. And so as we backtrack that timeline, here we are today. We've researched various resources. One, just what's available, so that was kind of a large pool. Then we narrowed it down a little further by what's happening in surrounding districts. Just like others have spoke to, reaching out to people also, as well as those vendors, those curriculum vendors, and getting samples in. Same thing, developed a family survey, developed a staff survey, collected that feedback, summarized those results. Just like everyone else has spoke to, it was just really interesting, the similarities between kind of what was of value of teachers for teaching social studies and for students learning, as well as for families for their child. So we used those surveys, and those top values are what made it to the list of criteria that we then evaluated the resources against after they had already been looked at against the standards. So the first layer before it even came to the team on Tuesday took care of that standards piece. Got the team together, and actually we ended up being able to host that on Tuesday. So kind of like everyone else has spoke to, we had to submit this on Monday, and that occurred on Tuesday. So this room on Tuesday was filled with 15 fabulous elementary. We had every grade level represented. There was EL, special ed, administration, myself, Angie, Amy, Laura were there. So we added in a few extra tables in here and heard from 4 different ones. So we hosted those presentations. And then we do have pilot teams secured. So every grade level has 4 pilot teachers, and then each grade level just sent 1 to that curriculum review team that happened on Tuesday as like their grade level representative for the district. And so that's where we're at so far. I'll turn it over to Angie.
Yeah, so this is, I'm not gonna spend too much time on this, but what we learned from the staff, again, nothing super surprising, but it's, we were able to just pull those things that stood above the rest, where we saw that drop off, and then pull those items into the resource evaluation tool that we used. And again, nice to see that there were 4 elements, I think, on the next slide, Amy, that stood out, and those were in line with some of the things that the teachers said. So we really had some things really in sync, which was helpful also. So we used, and just this might, I know Nina, you asked the question about, like, we literally took those things that were just on those previous slides, and that's what the rubric looks like that we do our evaluation with our elementary materials. So it really is pulling in, and we tell teachers that too, like when we ask for your feedback, we really use it. Like, we take what you say and we use that as the lens, so we really are there. It's really about what the teachers, not about what I think, I'm just facilitating the process. It's really what the teachers and the families are saying we need, and then us vetting those resources using that lens, so we don't get swayed off course by something that looks really neat if it's not gonna fall within what we are saying is important to us.
And like they spoke about elementary being a little different, we are able to gather the input of like 75 people. And then you see what rises to the top, so it's really just kind of that overwhelming majority where, you know, you speak of like there might be 9 people, you know. It's just like your data pool is so much smaller that, you know, one person could really kind of skew that, where we have a much larger group of teachers to then really see what's standing out, so.
So the next page is the 4 that we heard from. Yes, it feels like longer than yesterday. It was yesterday. These are the 4. We provided those links to you. I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at anything. I can share with you the 2 that stood above after conversations and some voting and additional questions Nina fielded for us to the vendors after, you know, something you forget, or it's also, you know, you'd love to have about a half a day with all of them to really dig into things. It's just not realistic. And those 2 are Impact McGraw-Hill, which is used by Swallow, Grafton, Cedarburg, Waukesha, and Slinger right now. And then Social Studies Alive TCI, which is currently used in Pewaukee. And as Amy mentioned, like we, you know, again, the timeline, like that's, we don't want that to be totally driving thing, but we also want to be considerate of the fact that if we do pilot these resources, where that we want to give a lot of time for the teacher part. Like we don't want to rush that part where they're actually using it and taking it for a test drive. So any of these little parts, like me and I really were working hard and trying to do like these parts behind the scenes, because the more with that we can get done, being true to the process and valuing the process, but expedite some of those pieces to give any extra breathing room to the pilot process where the, you know, that's where the real stuff will be vetted, is kind of the word we've been using a lot.
Sure.
So that's kind of some of that, kind of taking advantage of, hey, they could come on Tuesday, well then let's go. That was some of that, because if that saves us another week where teachers can be using the resources, we'll take that.
Sure.
And so this is just kind of, as you saw that like diagram, there's a lot of additional things happening, but as far as big picture of like the big benchmarks along the way, I don't think ours is a little quicker. It's not as big of a lift, social studies, as Michelle was saying with ELA, there's a lot that goes into ELA. That's such a huge cornerstone of elementary education, where social studies is important, but it's not as heavy of a lift.
Sure.
So I think we are able to, I think move on this one is just it's just a little bit of a later lift. So I think we do have the potential to move on it a little bit quicker as far as the work we've done so far. We aren't held to the same kinds of things that, you know, have all those extra things that are swirling for ELA at the moment.
It is a smaller part of our students' overall week, you know, in instruction, so.
So same as you heard from everyone else, kind of our immediate next steps, so that's kind of where we're at to this point, and what got us to this point here tonight. So moving forward, it would be to approve 2 resources that would then be piloted. Of course, we'd have to then work with the vendors to secure those materials, determine which unit would be piloted based on their current scope and sequence of instruction. So to get that underway, there's some training involved, and then really solidifying that pilot timeline. And we use the same criteria that was used to evaluate all 4 resources we brought in. Then they use that same criteria on a weekly basis to evaluate student learning that week, teacher ease of usage, planning, all of those 7 areas each week. And again, we have the larger pool of teachers test running. So we gather that data weekly. You know, if you used an assessment this week, how did it go? So we would get those surveys put together and compiled, and so those are some of our immediate next steps in this process. So that's where things are at.
I don't have.
I guess we didn't have a question slide, so.
Thank you
On that note, yeah.
I do wanna
No.
say, just with what I said before, it's not like I am disparaging like social studies in general, it's just
Yeah.
like
Oh,
very
gosh, no.
cognizant of like the teachers in regards to them having to undertake, especially the elementary level, undertake too, and I wanted to make sure that they weren't overwhelmed by doing so. And so, and I wanna make sure that we're very thoughtful and also mindful of how we implement it, and we do it right, versus rushed, that we do it the right way, for everybody to be happy about, so, as long as we're moving forward, I'm good.
Okay.
And everybody is actually good about, how we implement it, and I wanna ensure that that's the case.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I think there's always gonna be, I think with that listening, that was one of the schools out of 4. I'm sure within that one school, there's varying opinions within all 4 schools. We've been talking to teachers, and some are like on one end of like, oh my gosh, that would push me over the edge, and then there's on the other end of like, I'm
Please give
so
me
excited for
Yeah,
this.
right?
I was just meeting with a teacher the other day, and again, it's just one teacher, but she's like, I am not thrilled to take on a new thing, but I'm thrilled because I see my kids like total excitement around science. She's like, and it's been so long since we've had this like energy for learning and like excitement.
Yeah.
And she's like, and seeing what they're talking about and what they're writing, she's like, and then if that were the same in social studies. So there's always that like, on one hand and yep, and then different perspectives either way, and kind of like Angie spoke to, like, this isn't a good time. Is next year a good time? Is the year after that a good time? Like, when's the good time?
And I don't think pushing it back a year was my intent, it was just maybe, at least possibly staggering it or pausing a little bit.
I think it's
Just
nice to
to
hear
give-
that support from you, yeah.
Like teachers to
100%.
have a breathing instead of saying, here's our timeline and make that be the driving force.
Yeah.
That's not what I want, I would rather lose a little bit of money,
Yeah.
and not, you know, but like.
Curriculum
That's right, that was
We can talk later.
No penny will go
Do you know what I mean, like
unspent.
I would rather do it the right way versus just because we have this money, we have to spend and rush
Yeah.
and then we don't care what anybody thinks or the consequences of how it's implemented, because our students suffer in the end if it's not,
Yeah, and you can
100%.
spend the money, but and get really great stuff, but if you don't have, if you're not able to utilize it because of capacity, that's not good either, so.
So,
That's why I'm hoping too, like they'll do a unit, they'll try a
Yeah,
unit, and then it starts catching fire, and like they'll wanna keep, once they're settled with ELA and everything's squared away with that.
And we
Well, and
talked
maybe
about,
with the pilots too, they'll say, hey, this is really good stuff, and
This is really easy,
people that,
yeah.
right, it's easier than what I've been doing, and maybe somebody will be swayed one way or the other.
I think it's something we can monitor as we go through and then be really, once we get into the resources, we can be really thoughtful about thinking about that implementation. Again, I think if we get into those 2 resources and we're like, this is the top resource, this is gonna take more implementation, then mystery science, for example, and our ELA resource is gonna take a lot, then we need to, we can make some decisions. And I think with your permission and your permission, we can totally do that, because I'm 100% in agreement with you. I want it to be as easy as possible for our teachers. We were really lucky and successful. It wasn't luck, it was a lot of work. But with our elementary science curriculum, that has been very well received.
and that didn't feel good either, cause that was
No.
kind of all of a sudden it was, and it went really well, you just.
And phonemic awareness. I am hearing with the Haggerty
Yeah, I
that
was
we're
gonna ask
piloting,
how Haggerty's gonna
I
play
am
into it
hearing
next year.
really good
Yeah.
things. That's gonna depend on our
Okay.
curriculum resource. So,
True.
but we're seeing good results, and so I'm hearing positive things. So, but I didn't necessarily hear that in the beginning. So, and thinking about social studies, I do think about, in 2019 wasn't the right time, 2021 wasn't the right time. So I am conscious of the fact that sometimes it might never be a good time, but I think I want it to be hugely successful as well, because I care deeply about the learning for the students in our district, and that starts with really, good teachers doing good work. So we want them to be successful, so.
And that has been some of our conversation, even like, I totally get those concerns, I was in the classroom a year and a half ago, so I totally get it. And so we've been really mindful and thinking, how could this look, like what would this look like so that we could support teachers and make it manageable and have some bite-sized opportunities and teasing that out. And so again, like with that permission to do that, we can be super conscientious about it and hear the feedback and make adjustments just the way we do for our students. Anytime you're learning something, you make adjustments based on feedback and based on how things are going. And we are 100% willing to do that too, because we recognize that it's a big ask right now.
I'll leave the tiering up to all of the professionals. My goal is A, to fund it, which we've done, but B, to establish systems of a cycle.
Yes.
Because the cycle is broken right now.
Yes,
And
that
it's
is,
to reestablish the cycle, not just for ELA, social studies and science, but for all the whole process. And I know that's Amy's intent as well, but that's my 30,000 foot is to not, even if there's another COVID, God forbid, or whatever, that we continue moving with that cycle, because it's critical work.
it is, and so that's something that ladies have heard me talk about, and you of course have heard me talk about this year. That is my number 5 goal. It's not my number 1, I guess, but it's somewhere on the top 5 list, of being able to have sometime in January a draft of what that's going to look like moving forward, and then bring that to all of you sometime in the spring. So in January, hope to be able to start sharing that with curriculum leaders. One, so it's transparent, people can see this is where we are in the cycle, and when it feels like we haven't gotten social studies materials in how long, we can see, yes, we did it here, and we're gonna do it again here, or at least review and make a conscious decision about what we're gonna do next. So that is cyclical, we're not trying to do 2 core things at the same time, because that's not great at all. It's not great for me because I can't be as directly involved as I would like to be. I have to rely, and I mean, we do spend a lot of time together and working together, but I'm lucky to have an amazing team who can, take direction and go lead that, but with the vendor pieces, I wasn't able to see high school or middle school social studies yet, so, that's just how it goes, and so with that cycle, we'll be able to manage that big curricular area, maybe a couple small pieces, because you can't just do 1 a year, because there aren't, if you're gonna have a 7-year cycle, you're gonna have to double up, but we can be strategic about that, so we're managing it. So that's my goal moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you've done a lot of work on this. So
Thanks.
Thank you for that, too.
So like, are you able to take some meetings and like look at this too, or what is that?
Well,
yeah.
Thank you.
I'll take
Sally,
some.
good job.
That's the next geo stuff.
I know what this means.
Okay.
That North Star. Alright, yeah. Do you want me to send it here tomorrow?
Yes.
Or bring it here tomorrow?
Yes.
Could you please? Actually,
It's
take
not
it
national
to your
anymore.
office or is it gonna be out here? Is it gonna still be out here? These, or are you moving that?
I don't know.
Probably.
I'll call you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank you.
So,
So really my whole point from all that I went off the rails is I just want to prioritize.
Yes.
So for me, in regards to prioritizing ELA, that just like is
It has
core
to
for me.
be.
yeah, it has to
Everything
be.
else has to be in the background, and we have to then, slow, I didn't mean to like stop completely, but just slow one
Yeah.
component, I'm okay doing that.
Okay, yeah, we
Versus
Well, and
having
I
to
think that
feel-
was the plan.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that really was the intent that we've talked about, that maybe, depending on messaging, may or may not have, especially been the teachers at the time of your listening session. So I think, because I've had discussion with principals.
Multiple since then.
And then I think
for
moving
sure.
forward too,
So,
like a report on that, like
Yeah.
the timelines and
I
the
wanna
make
sure
feedback
everybody's on the
and
same
like,
page.
yeah.
once we get
Right.
into these pilots, then we'll be able to really tease that, I think, more
So
effectively.
why hasn't elementary established their committees yet?
Their review
The
committees
review committee,
Or maybe we
they have,
Oh,
for
they just
ELA,
haven't-
you mean? I'm sorry.
for, I think it was ELA that you had said in elementary, right?
they haven't met.
Oh.
It's being formed, so they're taking a little bit longer. One, we were waiting, because we thought a list was
Well.
coming out on Friday.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Or shortly thereafter,
so then it messed them up probably
a little bit,
timing-wise.
so, but I think we can still, I think we'll be okay. So that committee is in the process of being established. Michelle and I actually meet for a couple of hours tomorrow to kind of firm up some of those details, and then hopefully they'll get together with vendors next in December. So they're just a tick behind,
Yeah.
just because of some
I get
other
it.
work going on.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that social studies was perceived as more important than ELA. I guess just if that's a concern. I think it's just the social studies is a little bit easier to vet, because again, it's a smaller package. ELA is a bit larger, and again, we're teaching people about the science of reading still, and we did spend, I think I talked last month, we've spent some time in September and October, even I think maybe early November, maybe it was late October, going to some different sessions hosted by different groups, like CISA 1, CISA 6, another literacy group that we partner with, to learn details about Act 20. So all this has been rolling out, so that's slowed ELA a little bit perhaps, so no prioritization one way or another, they both are working at their,
That's our priority.
pardon?
ELA is our priority.
Correct.
Because
Correct.
really, I mean, truthfully, kids need to read, to learn, and comprehend, so if they can't read, how are they gonna do social studies? If they can't, they're not proficient.
Well, and social studies provides them another opportunity to practice too.
I love that alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I do
that's what my
too.
daughters
Yeah.
had, they, science
So,
always
yeah,
played off of
so-
ELA, social
yeah.
studies plays off of it.
Well, and
So-
my hope is that the teachers will see that it's gonna make social studies curriculum easier for them.
It will, definitely.
I mean, I had no idea that
Maybe
they've
when
been
we-
doing their own,
Oh,
or
yeah.
like sharing,
Oh, they've
And-
actually created a.
that's impressive.
Yeah, but it never came to you to like see or hear, it's
Approve.
just been, or to approve, and
Right.
to me, I think that is a
Yeah, that is
concern. I
not
think
transparent.
it's not transparent to parents,
Or
it doesn't,
consistent.
it doesn't protect teachers either, cause
Mhm.
they're on their own making decisions. Where this provides clarity about
The guideline.
Yeah.
So on that
Yeah.
note though, I to be straight up frank,
Yeah.
I whatever they wanna pick, I'm for.
Okay.
But I want that transparency, like I want access to books and videos and links and I even know boards that attend classes that are running the curriculum. I don't know if I wanna go that far, but
So I need to be
I
able
even
to
know
get
boards that
you
attended
access.
the pilots,
Mhm.
you know, or they attended the spiels for, you know, from the vendors.
For me, that would be helpful also
To be at the
have that
beginning.
before they present it to us.
Yeah.
Right.
Or I'm sitting
Well,
here,
I did go into some of the links
I did
and
too,
I
but I'm like
looked,
reading
I
it going,
poked around a little bit and I
I know,
got
but
like
if they're
a
gonna get a
30,000
textbook, I wanna see.
foot
it.
view of
100%, so
approach, but
that's
on
what we can
one
do
Okay.
in this pilot process,
example.
because we will be able to
Yeah.
get access
Exactly,
for the teachers who are piloting as well as you
Okay.
and me
yeah, I want
to be
something
able
in
to
hand.
dig in,
Yeah.
yes, so
Okay,
that
Like the
is,
teacher book, the student book, if
Some of
it's
them might
available,
even get
you know.
feedback while they're piloting too.
Yeah,
And
oh,
while
we,
they are-
they do that, they,
We-
yeah,
Well, yeah, cause she
they do
had
it.
said
They survey
once a
the
week for the
parents,
yeah.
teachers.
they survey the parents and,
So I wanna have
we can
feedback during that time, because
we
that
can
would be
schedule a
actually
mid-
helpful, yeah.
a mid pilot.
so like
interview, yeah.
reciprocal, yeah,
Yeah.
just I
Because-
want that access, I'm just speaking for myself, I guess, and you guys can chime in,
Yes.
but like access to the curriculum, just to survey it.
I fully
And then the other question I have is, out of the curriculum that you know of, how much has like social emotional learning attached to it? And
You would ask, but are you social studies or ELA?
well, ELA usually has it, like, and they all, you know, they have it and all of a sudden there's a blurb on how you're feeling or whatever.
I didn't see any
Okay,
of that
'cause
in
I
any of the
do know
middle school
curriculum like that.
presentations. I will say that one of the social studies materials, and it was the McGraw-Hill that
Mm-hmm.
kind of rose to the top, did have some little like social emotional connection
Mhm.
blurbs in some of the lessons.
Okay.
But that wouldn't necessarily be something we would put in our like pacing guide or say teachers, make sure you do this part, like that
Yeah,
wouldn't necessarily be what we would.
okay.
In the high school one, cause I sat in on the high school one for social studies,
Mhm.
I think it was Savis that had like some small social emotional learning at the high school level.
Okay.
But when we asked the rep about it, the rep said it was specific to like the individual student, not how they relate to other students or like she worded it like they might be thinking about how they can be a better citizen or how they need to review information so that they're well
like a question
informed.
to ask themselves.
Well, actually, when I read through the Sabbath, that was one thing that came to my attention, is it did seem to have like
Too much.
more SEL than others that I was
Yeah.
looking at.
So
Just as a side note, but again, you're getting one small
Yeah.
sample.
I mean, you have middle school, you have elementary, I mean, I know middle school has character strong, I don't think there's need to push it more in the
No.
subjects.
Right, and
Like
I
we need
don't,
to focus on the,
right.
Like, yeah, the academics and just like the facts.
yeah.
And that would be
So-
where we would go back to our social studies standards for middle school.
I
and-
guess in my
connect the
mind, that's where
lessons
I
to
would
that.
kind of draw the line. I would say, you know,
But I think this, having like a guideline, or a standard actually helps kind of fine tune that versus what we're
Well,
living
and
with it
looking
now.
at,
They're
like,
developing their own
their top
however,
curriculum.
I know, but they
I
throw
would
in
love to
social
see
emotional
them.
learning and it's got nothing to do with the lesson. Like, you know, like for example, math does that, you know, like math books, and they just throw that in. And I know like Germantown's piloting one with the SEL and without the SEL components that are built into their curriculum. I don't know which one, I think it was ELA, but I'm not sure. But, just something to think about, but we'll, if we see it all, then we'll know.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that
Yeah,
in
it's
order
exciting.
to see more, we need to,
100%, yes, but I
see,
would fully expect that you would have, and the pilot will give us a couple of months to really vet those things before we
Right.
brought you a
And
recommendation,
come
so.
to some conclusion, is it helpful in there, or, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and is it something,
So-
and sometimes we don't have to use every piece of it too.
Exactly.
So, there may be a component that we're like, oh, we don't need this.
And that's
So-
the other thing too, McGraw Hill,
Mhm.
it probably costs money, but they will adapt your curriculum but that has to
costs
cost
a lot of
money,
money.
doesn't
So
it?
McGraw-
Anything customized.
Yeah, exactly.
McGraw Hill did
Well, I know
share
they did that
that
for
they
Florida.
customized for
Yeah.
Wisconsin, a fourth grade Wisconsin unit
Really?
for MPS. So MPS paid for them to do it apparently.
Really?
And then we can use it. So that's
Yeah.
a benefit
Yeah.
because
Cause it's out there and you can use that one.
Wisconsin is something that we teach at fourth grade. And is something that it's, I mean, most social studies curricula
Oh,
aren't
like
going to
Wisconsin
have
history?
anything about Wisconsin,
Oh,
yes.
that's interesting.
So,
Okay.
so MPS paid for that customization, I can only imagine, or they did it with their purchase.
sure.
And I can only imagine what that.
Some licensure improvements at the state level with social studies. Social studies teachers are now coming out with certification. It used to be just 612
Mhm.
for social studies, but now it's actually 412. So that's new. Most principals or people that hire aren't even aware of that. And I know that it's true because my son got the certification. And he was in one of the first cohorts to be 412 certified. To do social studies, all content levels. So when I came up, because I was social studies teacher of middle school, high school, to get every content level, economics, sociology, psychology, history, civics, everything, you had to be in each individual area. You'd have to qualify in all the areas. Now that they have this licensure that is all encompassing 412 of all of the areas. It's actually I almost didn't believe it when he brought it up to me a year and a half ago. And I started reading up on it, but it's new
Okay.
and good.
All right, lots of reading coming up.
So, yeah, just so it goes.
So are you comfortable if we move forward with the pilots as
I am.
presented,
Yeah.
knowing
I'm
that,
comfortable,
knowing that
even
we're
looking at what they chose for their top two, I would be interested in seeing more about them.
we'll definitely
For
yeah,
sure.
that.
Like
I
I
would
would not
expect
wanna go and just like look through. Sorry, I'll let the experts determine all that.
Right, yeah, I don't think it's, if our teachers have already said like these two
Mhm.
are not the best
Right.
fit, then we
Yeah.
want you to spend your time on the best fit, so.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we'll do.
We have that approval, that is super, we
Cool.
will move forward and we'll keep you posted and appreciate all the comments and feedback and support, so very much appreciate it, so thank you, thank you, thank you.
And last but not least,
It's me. Yes,
Make it quick, lady.
No, so I am so glad that Laura's here to do this tonight because it's funny, I think back Laura was long into summer school planning by the time I came to the curriculum department, believe it or not, I think we forget that sometimes.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh gosh, Laura, so I think it would be wonderful for her to present this because she really did in my transition this was her baby, which I very much appreciate. She did a fantastic job with it, so. Over to Laura.
Yeah, so I love talking about summer school. I can interrupt at any time as we go through. So we have our Fall Summer Academy every summer. We're just gonna run through some of the program designs, enrollment trends, satisfaction feedback, financials, and then planning for summer 2024. So our program design for 2023 was similar to 2022. We're all in person aside from some limited virtual options at our high school level. So those courses continue to be 21st Century Wellness, which families give us feedback that they like that option. 21st Century Wellness is a credit accrual course. So any of our students can take that so that it opens up a space in their schedule during their regular school year that they can sub in a different class. And then our Quest courses, I think you're all pretty familiar with our Quest program, right?
Yeah.
So those students have the ability to continue taking courses in the summer so that they can continue to move through the program. And our enrollment trends.
Who teaches the Quest? I'm sorry.
Erin Brodzeller
Oh,
and
she's
Eric Wood.
for the summer too?
Yep,
Oh,
both of
that's
them
nice. Okay.
Yes.
Erin and Eric.
It's just them two.
Yeah, double
Yes.
E.
They had a homework.
Oh, they
They
did?
have an EA that works with them
Oh,
during
yeah.
the school year, but not during summer school.
Oh, gotcha.
What's her name? Sue?
Yeah, I think it's Sue.
I think they got a new one this year,
Yes.
didn't they? I think Sue moved over to the high school
Oh.
library.
Oh,
Yes, that was the COVID dip.
Yeah, it's pretty dramatic.
So
Oh, yeah, the
to stick
COVID.
to the COVID dip, in
Yeah.
2020, we only ran our credit recovery courses.
Doink.
We didn't run any of our enrichment courses, which is why our enrollment was so significantly low.
I wanna say that you have all the kids with no masks in the picture, so I'll make a special note of that. I love seeing all their faces.
So for 2023 trends, our number of enrolled students in course enrollments increased, and our number of course enrollments is returning to similar pre-pandemic enrollment totals. So that's really excellent.
Yeah,
It is.
it looks like it's almost like exactly where it was.
Yeah, so for 2023, we had 3,447 course enrollments.
Wow.
So it remains like our biggest school that we have in our district. So looking at the course enrollment by level, our course enrollment totals increased at the elementary and middle school levels, and high school enrollment remained stable. You can see from the graphs, that's pretty common.
Pretty typical for the,
Yeah, high school,
high school level.
they're there, they're not super excited to be there sometimes.
Yeah, right.
Elementary, the feedback from our families is the kids love it, they think it's engaging, so, we'll
Gonna
continue to.
combat some of that slide.
Yes.
Yeah, a
So
little
that
bit,
is-
yeah.
Well, and just the engagement with peers and that level of learning, like continuing to encourage that. So our enrollment trend by level, we have the enrichment and recovery. So just a reminder, at the elementary level, we don't have a recovery designation. We did at one point multiple years ago, but when we did a deep dive into our elementary recovery classes versus our students that never attended summer school recovery classes, there was no significant difference on their testing. And we were taking those students and grouping them into a class that feedback said they didn't think was the funnest class, hoping that we would move them a lot, and we weren't seeing the movement. So we reformatted those classes so they're all enrichment now, so we don't designate students into a specific class they have to be in. Our recovery classes have been revamped into enrichment classes to encourage a love of reading and exploring different topics and ideas rather than trying to catch them up on vocab or phonemic awareness or anything like that.
And then have you seen any difference since that change?
We haven't recently, because then we kind of hit COVID.
Right.
We haven't gone back to compare
Kind of
kids that
okay.
attend summer school versus kids who don't.
Okay.
That is something that maybe we could look at when we're talking about recovery stuff. So,
Just to make sure no one's falling through the cracks.
yeah. Our elementary classes are our fastest filling classes and generally have our highest enrollment. And then for both middle and high school courses, the enrichment enrollment increased slightly, and then that recovery enrollment decreased slightly. And our recovery enrollment is based on need. At the middle school level, we always kind of struggle a little bit there, partially because our kids who would be in that recovery aren't really excited to come to summer school, and then partially because of summer school schedules. Like a lot of the kids are in sports or other activities, which we have the half-day summer school, which hopefully is flexible because it's not the full day, but
They're not
sports
driving
camps.
age yet either though, so that
Yes.
kind of is, I'm sure a determining factor.
That's true.
I'll tell you, some of the videos I saw over the summer and the pictures, when they were middle school, they seemed to enjoy it.
Yeah, we do have some
Maybe they were
classes
thinking
that
it.
really fill at the middle school level.
Yeah.
And then we have some that don't.
Do you think it's right to send them like
Fun with
the
math.
younger because of like childcare? Like
I think
they
that's
put them into
partially
something they're learning
And it's linked to Kids Inc. So
Yeah.
wherever our summer school location is where Kids Inc. is
Yeah.
too, so kids can go from Kids Inc. to summer school and right
Gotcha.
back. Which we don't have that
Oh.
capability at middle school.
Oh, gotcha.
So they're more dependent on getting to whatever location we have middle school at.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any questions around anything so far? Okay. So satisfaction. Thank you. So 94% of our families indicate they would recommend fall summer school. Families do a survey that we put out at the end of summer school, and feedback said they enjoyed the opportunities. Some disappointment came in that some of the course offerings were canceled. Typically, we don't cancel course offerings unless, first and foremost, we don't have a staff member to teach it, which is where we kind of fell in the past couple of years post-pandemic. And then some just because there's really low enrollment. We generally try to run a class with a minimum of 8 students, partially just so there's some, people to engage with. So when we have 1 or 2 students sign up for a course, that's the course that gets canceled.
Right.
Mm.
And then financially too, it doesn't necessarily make sense for us to
Right.
Yes.
continue to offer classes
Yeah,
with
to kind
2 or
of
3
consolidate.
students. Yeah.
Right, yeah, we do need this to be self-sustaining. So, but finding staff members is not unique, or the trouble of finding staff members is not unique to Menominee Falls for summer school, post-pandemic, that's been a challenge.
Yes, and that's for teachers and for special ed EAs. Just the feedback from staff has been that they just want a break. They have nothing against summer school, they just want a break from being in the classroom.
Yeah.
And the same with some of our special ed EAs, they just want a break from being with the special ed kids so they can be a better special ed EA during the school year, which we completely understand.
Sure.
Just makes staffing a little harder.
Right.
Okay, and then financials. So this is our net program financial impact. And there's kind of a big difference between 22 and 23. So I sat down with the business office so that I could correctly explain this. Because this is like, they have a 3-year average system and it's a whole equation. So the number of students we had enrolled, or our student FTE for 2023 increased.
Mhm.
And the per pupil revenue from the state also increased as part of the biannual budget that was approved by the governor.
Okay.
And then we had less teachers teaching, so our cost of staffing decreased, our enrollment increased, and the amount we got per kid increased. And that's why
Wow.
you see the difference.
I get it. It's clear.
Good.
Yeah.
Because
That was
I
really good.
parroted that back to math
I
a
loved
lot
it.
to make sure that I had that.
Not that I could repeat it to anybody else, but I understood it when you said it.
Yes.
Yeah, it also has to do with the 3-year average.
Right.
Yes.
So there's a 3-year average for this, just like in the annual meeting,
Mm-hmm.
that when you see a 3-year average for student enrollment,
Mm-hmm.
that the count is different.
Mhm.
For summer school, they don't count a full FTE.
Right.
And that's part of it too.
And so in the 3-year average, then summer 2020 is no longer there now,
Exactly.
so that was pulling us down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Alright,
Interesting.
go ahead, sorry. Sitting there looking
It
at
is
it.
a formula.
So our planning for summer 2024 is we'll review course offerings again. We tend to do that every year to make sure that we're offering things that are interesting to our students, that we're offering things that our staff is interested in teaching, and adding new courses where we can. It's pretty common for us to add 1 or 2 new courses at each level. At the high school level last year, unfortunately, the 2 new courses that we added didn't get much enrollment, so they ended up getting canceled.
Which were they? What were they?
Tourism and fashion.
Yes, I was gonna say fashion something.
Fashion something. And that was the business teacher, the younger gentleman, Dante Sisk, who had wanted to teach those, and then the enrollment was like, 1 or 2 kids. So he ended up moving to elementary theater class, which he thought was really cool.
Okay.
So
Somewhat of a
Very
parallel
flexible,
somewhere,
very
yeah.
flexible.
So I appreciate the flexibility.
I know.
Exactly.
Activity when, you know,
More power to 'em.
in summer school, you get to be a little creative.
Yeah,
as a teacher
yeah,
too,
exactly.
So, yeah, you
Yeah.
get to try it out.
yeah, so we'll look at that and staff hiring.
Yeah.
So we have the maximum opportunities. And
Helps for
then
extra cash, maybe people wanna, you know.
so we have talked about, over the past couple of years, we have done a teacher raise for, I believe, the past 2 years. And feedback last year when we were asking if, would another raise incline you to teach? Would having an extra personal day incline you to teach? The feedback there was, I don't care what you're offering. I need a break.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I think that's a lot of times.
we'll review it again.
It's why they're in the profession too, so
That's
they
a
have those
good
summers off.
question
and-
to ask though, and it's good feedback to have, so.
What is the total budget for summer school?
So our budget is around 300 and something thousand. And I have to look at it again because when we were working with Caitlin and Matt, between the shifts in payroll, there was some confusion in where they counted budgets to. So when I run summer school budgets, typically it all resides in one fiscal year.
Right.
And between a payroll person, she split it into 2 payroll years. So when we were looking at budgets for this past year, we ended it at 300 something because we knew it needed to be roughly there, but it was hard to build off of 2022 because of the split they had done. So I don't have an exact number for you right now.
Are we positive dollars?
Yes.
To what extent?
So that fiscal sheet, so that is our net gain. So when we run summer school, sorry, I didn't say this. When we run summer school.
Well, there it is, net program, okay, it's at top.
Yeah.
Net program impact,
Yep, so our net gain is, so we're in the black, 133,000.
Yeah.
When we run summer school, our goal has always been to break even. So we don't run it with the intention to use it as a moneymaker, some districts do. We never have, but we, and sometimes me, are very fiscally responsible with what we spend money on. So we know when we have costs, we have that built in where we always try to run our classes at a certain minimum number of students. When we have new classes start, we know that we'll have increased costs there with like our sewing, we got some sewing machines, things like that. And then we offset that with working through some of our sports classes, because those are high enrollment classes, and making sure that we really maximize those enrollments.
Yeah, there's the local budget, meaning it's the local net like this, but then there's also the impact on our overall FTE, which you see at the annual meeting. So there is an effect there as well when you maximize. So when she mentioned maximizing money, I see it from the annual meeting perspective. Because this affects that, not the dollars, but the FTE.
Okay.
In other words, the students total.
Yeah, and for state reporting purposes, we're very conscientious about attendance because that impacts our ability to report students for FTE.
That's right.
So we've done a lot of work over the past couple of years in parents reporting absences, giving them options to be able to give us digital information about upcoming vacations and kids who don't show up, do we have a seat available that we can open up to another student? Things like that.
Okay.
So we work through all those pieces. So then going back to the planning for summer 2024, our planned dates for summer school are still in those 2 sessions. So they run as two 2-week sessions. the session in June, which is a week after school gets out. And that runs for 2 weeks, and then we do the week off of July 4th, because past planning has told us that's where most of our absences occurred.
Yep.
And then we have the 2 weeks in July. We typically stay within those 4 weeks because feedback from staff and families is that they want time to take vacation. And our July enrollment is typically smaller than our June enrollment because so many families are on vacation at that time.
Okay.
So we have almost all of our classes split so that you can enroll for just one session and the other, or just one and not the other. And we did that based on family feedback, I think, in the last 2 years, because we used to have a lot of 4-week classes. So we adjusted some stuff, so it's 2 weeks and 2 weeks. And then locations are planned for Shady Lane and Valley View. That's a rotation from last year, and we typically do that every other year so that our maintenance team has the ability to deep clean in different buildings. And then North is back at the high school again. They were also in 2023. And that's due to construction projects. I believe they have more roofing work going on and something possibly with an elevator. So,
that roof was so
Boiler.
stinky when they did that.
It's that'll be coming up at the December 11th meeting. It's, the roofing has already been pre-approved, but it's the cooler, the middle school
Oh, yeah.
cooling unit. You'll see that on the December 11th
We talked about
board meeting. So it's a substantial 23-year-old issue that we're hoping to solve.
Oh,
Yes, it's a good
It's
chunk,
pricey.
so anyway, that'll
Okay.
mean that middle school and high school are, well, with the high school next year.
Yep, middle school
Or
will be
this
on
summer.
fire.
Yeah.
But we did that last year.
Yeah, so now
Yeah.
it's
yep,
easy
and
peasy.
both administrators said it went really well. We have done it in the past for different construction projects also.
Sure.
They're on, like, I think opposite ends or
Yeah.
something like that, so they're separated.
Well, it's nice, I mean, there's so much space there too, use the
Yes.
base building.
Mm-hmm.
Very good, okay.
Thank
Is that it?
Yep,
I
that's
think
it.
Wow.
that is it.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, that just highlights our dates.
And then the C&L committee calendar.
Yes. So, yes, if we can move forward with
Okay.
pilots, then we don't need to meet in December.
Okay, oh, awesome.
So, I know I was like, woo.
That's the incentive, right?
That's right, that's right. Well, I think turning
You guys
around
have
and
lots of stuff to do.
and turning around another meeting in this short of time
Oh, yeah.
frame is not gonna be to anybody's
And then
advantage.
buckle up for January.
Correct. January is gonna be kind of big. So right now, we have some annual updates that would come to us in January. And then we have tentatively scheduled the North Middle School schedule update, kind of review where we are since that was new this year. I have a tentative Educator Academy course and program update. I think I had put in a Board Connect that we were considering some changes to. That has kind of morphed again and kind of been put on pause.
Okay.
So just some different things came up that we're kind of working through. So
Okay.
it's possible that they will bring something in January, although it won't be what I had originally described in the Connect. But
Okay.
we are flexible and continue to problem solve, so but it's possible we'll have something in January. So, but we do not have any dates for
Oh, yeah, we need to
January,
set up some
February,
dates.
March,
Yeah.
April or May or June. So if we could take a few minutes and get at least a January, a February and a March down,
Are we still
that
gonna
would
meet
be
in April?
super.
Yeah, we are.
We're gonna meet in
We
April
have
and
to.
I might ask, depending on where we are with these pilots, that we have 2 meetings in April.
True, okay.
We might need that
Yeah.
just to make sure that as people are ending different
But
things,
we're gonna
that
still
it's-
do it with the existing board, not the, cause that's the
Yes.
election, okay.
Correct, we would like to get both of those done prior to the
Okay,
election if possible, so
let's
buckle
see.
up. Let's
Yeah. But I do agree that that's the best way to do it, so
So we'll still do
we'll
Wednesdays?
buckle up.
Yeah.
Wednesdays are still good
Yes.
for everybody mostly, except for me. No, I actually scheduled myself to leave a little early today, so.
So previously, we had met on like the third Wednesday,
Yeah.
I think is,
But WASB's on
that
in
is
January
right.
seventeenth. So
So,
do you wanna do, do you wanna do the 24th?
You know, we have policy, yeah.
On the 24th. The 10th is really hard for me. I mean,
You wanna do the 20th?
I don't think I can do the 10th. can't tell you why, but I'll tell you after.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Maybe, I mean, no, I would prefer, or a different day that week, if we could swing it.
So, yeah, we have the board meeting
So we can't do the 10th.
on the 8th, let's see, the 11th,
The 11th?
I am able to do the 11th,
We can actually do
Laura.
it then.
would you be able to?
Yeah, I think I can make that work.
Okay.
So, yeah, we have a grade level
I can make it
meeting
work.
from 4 to 5 that day, but
Okay, so maybe we'll make it, 5:30, easier, earlier the better,
yeah, we can make
That-
that work.
that
We can
won't,
do it during the day.
and then coordinating everybody to show up that day.
Yeah, that should work.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause that's probably my
Oh, well,
biggest
thank
piece is
you. I
all the people
appreciate it.
who.
so 5:30 on the 11th.
So we're doing it at 5:30 then?
Yeah,
Does that work?
sure.
Okay, so that's.
Alright, so that saves 2 meetings in the same week.
Yeah.
And then
So one
February,
meeting too, just get up.
well, 14th is on a Wednesday, but that would be, yeah, we could all be Valentine's Days. David probably don't like that idea, he probably has to get home to give her a big kiss on the cheek.
We're fine.
The 21st look like.
Always
we could do the
considered it a
7th.
fictitious
Let's see,
holiday.
so one,
I call it the homework holiday.
well, February 7th is actually like, I don't know, what do you guys want? I don't care.
Oh, I'm gone.
I am not available the 7th.
Okay, so 14th? That work, or is that a rough day for some people?
Not me.
I was gonna say, I don't currently have any plans, but you
I
know.
mean, I'll tell you.
My options.
You gotta keep your options open.
You never know. Oh God, we gotta.
What about
finish
you,
this up.
Laura?
I
You
think
pick,
it's-
you pick.
That came out kind of funny.
I'm good with
That
the
came out kinda
14th or
funny.
the 21st.
We could do the
Trying
21st.
to come to the
I'm
end of
good
the
with the
meeting.
14th, the
We
21st.
could do, let's do the
20. I'm
Well-
telling you, 29 days with my husband is like, what do we do now?
well, I mean, it doesn't look very,
Not doing anything.
Yeah, okay.
it doesn't look very
29
heavy,
years.
we could stretch it to the 21st.
I
don't know.
believe it.
We have 24.
It doesn't matter to me.
If we're gonna have people at the meeting, what's on the grades 3 through 5
Well, other
academic
people
Yeah.
calendar?
things
Do we wanna pull the
Yeah, I
principals
mean,
in?
they might have other people
I-
they wanna take
Let's
care
take
of,
a look at the, you're not available.
I'm not the 21st.
Oh, you're
What about
not?
the 15th?
Wait, so we're not doing the 14th? Are we not?
I could
Well, we
do
were
it.
thinking like other people coming.
We're supposed to have an academic update, so we'd be asking principals to leave their,
Well, we don't have a
Oh, their
live, they
loved
shouldn't have a
ones.
live either.
their.
Yeah, that could be rough.
We'll
So
do the 15th.
What about
if
the
you're
15th?
okay with the 15th, is this,
Don't you have a meeting that day?
I'm out of the district that day.
okay?
13th?
What about, the 8th isn't gonna work.
13th could work really well.
Yeah, 13th, I can do 13th.
And it has to be later for me.
That's, yeah, so it'd have to be 6.
6 is good?
Okay.
On the 13th?
February 13th.
That's Tuesday,
That's
right?
the day.
That's a Tuesday.
Unless you wanna do,
Board meeting,
what about the
Monday.
22nd, Thursday the 22nd?
I could do that.
This is like an
We
auction.
can do that too.
I could do that.
22nd.
The 22nd.
So 22nd, what time?
Yeah.
Earlier?
I can do earlier on the 22nd.
So
By
what time?
earlier,
So we have to
5:30?
find earlier.
I can do earlier.
I can do 3.
Yeah, I'll do 2. How about 7 a.m.? What do you wanna do, 5?
I can do 5, I can do 4.
Oh, let's do 4.
Like,
Let's do 4. 4 works.
I can do 4.
Let's do 4. You wanna do 3? Everybody at 3? No?
4,
I think, yeah, we just have to schedule our
It'll probably work for the
3 through 5 principals just a little bit later so they can get here, but I think that's not a problem.
Got it.
Okay.
So February, we're
Alright, so
good?
now we're into
Can we
March. March might get a little tricky. Well, not
I'm just
that
looking
tricky,
at
but
them.
there is vacation, school vacation. And the calendar's not up with that.
So,
Throw a date out there,
The 20th.
20th. I think the 20th works. For me, it does.
It does not work for me. What about the 13th?
Why do we have
I can do 13th.
Board meeting on the 19th on a Tuesday on March 20th.
Well, because it was off, I think
Off
that
cycle,
the
and the
village
village
must
had
have
it.
the room.
And spring break is the last week.
That's why, okay,
Yeah,
'cause
so
I
we
have it
moved
on
it
here.
up.
Oh,
I
wow.
have it
Yeah.
on a Tuesday.
So
the-
what date did you say, Sarah?
What about the 13th,
The-
Wednesday the 13th?
I can do that.
13th, we could meet earlier. That is tentatively scheduled to be a steering committee meeting. So
Hmm.
David at least will be.
The 13th, the earliest I can do is by
Okay.
6 o'clock.
And that wouldn't work.
I mean, I could try this.
And we have 3 steering committee meetings that we've kind of set.
Yeah, let's just
We
move
should
it.
stay away from those.
Yeah,
What about the 12th?
12th works for me, but it's gonna be her late day.
Okay.
So
What about the 14th?
14th I can do.
I can do that.
Is that Valentine's Day again?
No.
March 14th,
No, it's not every month.
Okay.
Well, not for you, but for some of us.
Can we do earlier again, like the 4 o'clock on the 14th?
Yes.
What time did you say? I'm sorry.
4 o'clock on March 14th?
Work for you?
Yeah, is this pushing it with
I
you,
don't like
Laura?
earlier if I can. Just
So, yeah, I'm in meetings until 3 that day, so.
Yeah, 4 is good. Or-
Like
I mean, if we
daily
have to like
meetings.
adjust it along the way, we can just run it by this.
starting late and then ending late.
Okay, so April. So the election is on the 2nd,
Okay, so,
and then they will probably get sworn in by,
That's like at the end of the month.
yeah, so we
Oh, it's the
shouldn't
end
even
of
No,
have
it's like
one.
mid, cause I was sworn in like, I
it's
wanna
by a certain
say, like
date. I
April
don't know the
14th
date.
or 15th.
No, I think weren't you like sworn in beforehand and then the board meeting is
The actual
introduction,
meeting,
remember?
yeah.
Right,
You got sworn in beforehand.
That's true.
the board meeting would be
So-
the 22nd.
Yeah.
22nd, board meeting 22nd, so you might want 2 before then, right?
2
Okay,
before
let's
then.
shoot for the first week of April then.
Okay.
And then if we don't need it, we can cancel it, but that way we're prepared, because
Yeah.
again, there's just gonna be a lot happening.
So first week of April,
Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
So
I-
April 3rd?
is that coming off of,
Yes.
Oh.
Spring break
That
is
is
the
coming
week
up
before,
after spring
and then
break. I am available the 3rd.
Monday the 1st
It
is,
has to be a 6, it's not a Wednesday.
Monday the 1st is a no school day too, I think it must be the Monday after Easter.
Oh, it is, yes, it's also my birthday,
What? When is it?
April 1st.
Oh,
No
cool.
jokes, no jokes.
Yeah, there's a lot of April 1st people. I don't know,
Okay, your call.
so what are the dates for you? April 1st?
April 3rd was
The
the,
3rd was what we were talking about.
3rd or 4th.
that'll allow us to come back, I don't know if you're working the 1st,
I can do, it's coming back from
Yeah. it'll give us a couple days.
Easter break or whatever. Yeah, so I can do the 3rd. I can do the 3rd at 6, but
Okay.
Okay.
I can do 6.
Is that good for you, Nina?
that's a Wednesday though, so. We have it really good on the other days. All right,
And then what about
and then the tentative other April date?
17th?
Sure.
Gives it 2 weeks.
Oh,
And if we don't need it, we'll definitely
Just
cancel
double check
it.
something.
And the 17th works for me, and what
So we'll do
time?
6 again,
6 again, okay.
Oh,
right?
So it's
I gotta think. Yeah, I can switch it. I'm supposed to do a stroke support group, I think then, but it's not scheduled yet, so this comes first, I told them that. So what was the date?
April 17th.
Yeah.
C&L supersedes your strokes.
Yeah, I'll be like, sorry.
I don't know your patients really.
We're still recording.
And then I didn't say anything bad.
I'm just teasing.
6 p.m.
Good point.
Yes. And then potentially we would have a change in committee members after that, potentially, not necessarily,
Yeah.
but.
Correct.
Okay.
All right,
So
no
we're
more.
Okay.
So I think we're scheduled
And then we
as
don't
much as we
schedule
can
any more
That was
until we-
actually miraculous.
That was really good, I'm really impressed.
Well done.
I appreciate your flexibility and willingness to double up in April if we need to.
Cool.
Can make sure we
Alright.
get all of our
I do think that's a good plan.
ducks in a row.
Actually, you can check that schedule right now. All right, so I think we're set there.
A motion.
I'll second.
Wow. Don't all line up at once.
I can
Yeah,
go
so
with the
motion to
bows.
adjourn, you have to let me do my thing. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No, she had to second.
Oh,
I did
she did second. So Sarah second, okay. And then, yep, very good, then we're done. Okay, meeting is adjourned.